exorcism of Anneliese Michelle. Now imagine the sound of someone growing in 6 different voices, all coming from the same young woman. That's exactly what priests and witnesses reported hearing during the exorcisms of Anneliese Michelle, which is one of the most disturbing cases the Catholic Church has ever tried to silence. Anneliese was a bright, deeply religious 23-year-old student from Germany. Now she wasn't just any girl, she was kind, devout, and dreamed of becoming a teacher, but her life spiraled into something unimaginable after she began suffering from seizures at the age of 16. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, which is a condition that can cause hallucinations. But as the years went on, her family and even her doctors started to notice things that just couldn't be explained by medicine. Now, Anneliese began hearing voices that told her she was damned, and she claimed to see demonic faces everywhere she looked. Crosses made her recoil in pain. She couldn't even enter a church. She screamed when holy water touched her skin, and her parents described seeing her contort her body in impossible ways and bark like an animal for hours. When priests were called in, they claimed she spoke fluent Latin, a language she had never studied, and identified herself as 6 different entities: Lucifer, Judas, Iscariot, Nero, Cain, a really bad guy who I can't talk about, and a disgraced priest named Fleischmann. Now, over 10 months, 2 priests performed 67 separate exorcisms, some lasting up to 4 hours as Anneliese's body kind of withered away to less than 70 pounds. By the time she passed away in 1976, her knees were shattered from kneeling in prayer for so long. Her last words were heartbreaking. She whispered to her mother, "Mother, I'm afraid." Now, the church quietly buried the case, but tapes of her exorcisms with guttural growls, snarling laughter, and overlapping demonic voices leaked years later, terrifying anyone who heard them. The church still refuses to acknowledge her possession, labeling it a medical failure. But many priests who actually saw her firsthand swore there was something far darker than epilepsy inside her. The exorcism of Roland Doe. Now, this is the true Exorcist. Now, if you've ever seen The Exorcist, you know how terrifying that film is. But what if I told you the real story behind it? It's even worse, and the church has kept most of it hidden. Well, in 1949, a 14-year-old boy known under the pseudonym Roland Doe, sometimes Robbie, began experiencing very bizarre, violent phenomena in Maryland. It started small scratching noises inside his bedroom walls, objects flying, off shelves, and his mattress began shaking violently at night. Then, very strange words began appearing on his skin, scratches that seemed to be written from the inside out. His family, desperate for answers, first sought help, from their Lutheran pastor, who quickly realized this was beyond his power. He turned to the Catholic Church. Multiple priests reported that Roland's behavior would shift instantly. One moment he was calm and polite, the next his eyes would roll back. His voice deepened beyond recognition, and his body would convulse with superhuman strength. During one exorcism, witnesses claimed the boy broke free from his restraints, ripped a spring from the bed, and slashed a priest's arm from shoulder to wrist. On another occasion, the word hello appeared carved into his stomach. It wasn't written by anyone in the room, it just formed itself as priests looked on, in horror. The boy's family was relocated multiple times to, continue this ritual, eventually ending up at a Jesuit hospital in St. Louis. Over a month of nightly exorcisms, priests recorded that Roland levitated, spoke in Latin, and growled in voices that didn't belong to him. The final exorcism ended with him screaming the words, "Satan, I am Saint Michael. You will leave this boy now." Then, according to witnesses, a loud kind of sound echoed through the room. Roland fell back onto the bed unconscious, and when he woke up, he whispered, "It's over." So the Catholic Church sealed the official records, but priests later admitted that several exorcists involved refused to speak of what they saw ever again, and the boy's real identity, still protected today, remains, one of the most guarded secrets in modern exorcism history. The Smurl haunting. If you think demons only attach to people, think again. The Smurl family learned that evil can actually infest an entire home. Now, in the quiet suburb of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into what they thought was their dream house in the late 1970s, but within weeks, things turned nightmarish. The smell of rotting flesh would fill the air, walls kind of with brown ooze, and an unseen force slammed their dog into a wall so hard it left a dent. At night, the family reported hearing growls, footsteps, and whispering voices calling their names. Now, the demon targeted everyone differently. It actually essayed Janet while she slept, apparently. It hurled Jack across the room in front of witnesses. Their daughters were terrorized by shadowy figures that hovered over their beds. And when the family called the church, priests initially dismissed them until famed demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved. Lorraine later claimed she saw a dark human-shaped mass crawl up the wall and vanish into the ceiling. The Warrens described the entity as, inhuman. Not a ghost, but a demon feeding on the family's suffering. Multiple exorcisms exorcisms were performed, each one making the activity worse. Neighbors reported hearing screams and moans coming from the house when no one was actually inside. The Smurls even moved, but the demons followed them. It wasn't until the late 1980s that the church performed a final secret exorcism. Afterward, the attacks stopped abruptly. The church publicly denied involvement, but the warrants claimed the Vatican sent priests under orders of complete confidentiality. To this day, the Smurl haunting remains one of the most chilling and controversial possession cases the church refuses to comment on. The Enfield poltergeist. Now, few cases in history have more witnesses, photos, and evidence, and yet the church still won't touch it. In 1977, single mother Peggy Hodgson and her 4 children began to experience a series of escalating paranormal events in their modest council house in Enfield, London. It began when Peggy's daughters heard knocking on the walls of their shared bedroom. Furniture slid across the floor on its own, toys flew through the air, and 11-year-old Janet was the center of it all. She began actually levitating in front of witnesses. British police officers, journalists, and psychic researchers all saw very unexplainable things firsthand. Janet would speak in a voice that was clearly not her own, deep, a male kind of voice, claiming to be the spirit of a man named Bill Wilkins. Now, he had passed away in the house years before that, but soon the activity grew a lot darker. Janet was seen being thrown from her bed by invisible hands, twisted in midair, and dragged across the room. Investigators reported extreme temperature drops and even bite marks that appeared out of nowhere. The local priest refused to continue visiting after one encounter left him violently ill. The church worried about public backlash and accusations of hysteria, so they declined to perform an exorcism. Instead, it actually distanced itself from the family. But recordings from the investigation, over 200 hours worth, still exist. They actually contained Janet's horrifying possession voice and the sound of furniture moving when no one was actually near it. Skeptics still debate whether the Enfield poltergeist was real or staged, but when dozens of independent witnesses, police, reporters, and neighbors, they all describe the same impossible things, it's very hard to call it fake at that point. The possession of David Glatzel and the devil made me do it case. Now, this story is one of the few cases where demonic possession became a legal defense in court, and the church wanted nothing to do with it. In 1980, 11-year-old David Glatzel began seeing a mysterious shadowy figure with hooves and glowing eyes. He said it threatened to steal his soul. Within days, he was having violent fits, growling, and speaking in voices that weren't his. The family called Ed and Lorraine Warren, who said they found clear signs of demonic possession. Now, over several days, they assisted priests in performing multiple exorcisms. During one of them, a witness claimed they saw a black mist rise from David's body and move towards his sister's boyfriend, Arne Cheyenne Johnson. Arnie allegedly shouted, "Take me instead." Weeks later, Arnie began acting strangely, moody, distant, aggressive, and on February 16th, 1981, he brutally hurt his landlord to unaliving him, claiming he didn't remember doing it. Now, during the trial, his defense attorney argued that, Arnie had been possessed when he committed this crime. It became known worldwide as the devil made me do it case. Now, the church distanced itself completely, refusing to confirm or deny its role in David's exorcism, but witnesses, including the Warrens and multiple family members, insisted they saw supernatural forces at work. Arnie served just 5 years in prison for far less, that was far less expected, and later he actually said he believed something truly evil had taken over him. The Vatican never commented on the case, and the original exorcism tapes have never been released. Some claim they, locked away in a church archives evidence, and some also claim that, they just don't want the world to hear it. Well, let me know what you think. Which demonic possession freaked you out the most? Let me know. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you later. Some stories start as whispers told around campfires or pass between kids on playgrounds, but sometimes those urban legends turn out to be horrifyingly real. These aren't made-up tales. These are true stories that prove some legends walk amongst us. Rats in the toilet bowl. Now, it's in the middle of the night, you stumble to the bathroom, half asleep, flip up the toilet lid, and staring back at you from the water is a living, hissing rat. It sounds like a nightmare, right? But this urban legend has been proven true time and time again. Rats really can swim through sewer pipes. They can navigate, bends in the plumbing and emerge straight through your toilet. So in countless cities around the world, plumbers have confirmed cases of residents finding live rats splashing in their bowls, especially in older buildings where the pipes are connected directly to the main sewer lines. The Perron family haunting, Bathsheba's curse. Now, if you've ever felt someone watching you in your own home, multiply that by 10. And then imagine that someone wants you gone or deceased. Now, the Perron family lived through it for years inside a farmhouse where shadows whispered, beds levitated, and a spirit that once nursed children began trying to harm them. In 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron, along with their 5 daughters, moved into an 18th century farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Now, at first, it seemed like a charming old property, but soon the family realized they weren't alone. The girls reported hearing voices in the night, objects disappeared, doors slammed without warning, and the family dog refused to enter the house. The most frightening presence was a womanly figure in a gray dress, often described as tall, thin, and with a crooked neck. Sometimes she appeared loving, brushing the girls' hair. Other times she turned violent, pinching, slapping, and even threatening them. Now, Lorraine Warren believed this was the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman who lived in the area during the 1800s. Now, local legends said Bathsheba had sacrificed her own infant to the devil, and when accused of witchcraft, she cursed the land before unaliving herself. The parent children began waking up with bruises and scratches. Carolyn, the mother, was especially targeted. On one occasion, her body was overtaken during a seance conducted by the Warrens. She spoke in strange voices, her chair levitated, and she screamed with such force that family members thought she would probably pass away. Now, Roger, terrified for his wife's life, demanded the Warrens leave the house immediately. The parents endured the haunting for nearly a decade before they could finally move out. Even decades later, the daughters have spoken publicly describing the horrors they faced, voices whispering their names, dark figures standing at the foot of their beds, and the feeling that their house wanted to consume them. This case became the inspiration for the film The Conjuring, but the reality was far more disturbing. Unlike in Hollywood, there was no happy resolution. For the parents, the horror simply became part of their lives. The Enfield poltergeist, London's haunted house. Now, a young girl is thrown across her bedroom by invisible hands while her sister watches in terror. Photographs capture her mid-air, seemingly levitating, and in the darkness, a guttural voice growls from the mouth of a child, "This is my house." That was Enfield, 1977. Now, the Hodgson family lived very modest, council house in Enfield, London. It became, though, one of the center of one of the most famous poltergeist cases in history. 11-year-old Janet Hodgson was often the focus. Now, furniture slid across the floor, toys hurled themselves across the room. Witnesses, including police officers and reporters, swore they saw Janet levitate nearly a foot above her bed. The entity didn't just move objects, it actually spoke in a very gravely voice. It seemed almost impossible for a child to be able to mimic it, and it identified itself as Bill Wilkins, a man who claimed to have passed away in the house. When pressed, the voice revealed details about Wilkins' demise, details later confirmed by the neighbors. Now, the Warrens visited, the house, and though they weren't the lead investigators, Ed believed the poltergeist was demonic in origin, not just, the restless spirit of Bill Wilkins. Now, he claimed there were multiple entities feeding off the chaos and fear of the family. The controversy lies in whether the haunting was real or fabricated. Skeptics argued that Janet faked some of this, phenomena, and there is footage, though, of her bending spoons or throwing objects herself, but believers point out the sheer number of witnesses, including journalists and police officers, who experienced, very unexplainable events firsthand. Now, to this day, the Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most debated hauntings of all time. Whether it's a hoax, or horror, the case basically cemented the Warrens' reputation and inspired The Conjuring 2. Annabelle, the doll that crawled in the night. Now, picture this. You wake up in the middle of the night, frozen in bed, unable to move, and suddenly feel a small pair of cloth arms climbing onto your chest. You look down, and the doll sitting in your living room earlier that night is now straddling your torso. Its lifeless button eyes staring directly into yours. Now, that's exactly what one man described before he discovered there were scratches across his chest. Now, the story of Annabelle began in 1970 when 2 young nurses students in Hartford, Connecticut actually received a Raggedy Ann doll as a gift. Now, at first, it was nothing more than a cute decoration, something to brighten their apartment, but almost immediately they began noticing very strange behavior. The doll would be left in one room only to be discovered in another room. Now, sometimes it would be slumped in a chair with its legs crossed, other times kneeling on the floor as if it were praying. Soon, scraps of paper appeared around the apartment, kind of with chilling messages like "help us" or "help Lou." Now, neither of the women owned this paper, nor did they keep any writing utensils near the doll. Now, the haunting escalated when Lou, a fiance of one of the roommates, had a terrifying encounter. He was napping when he felt paralyzed, unable to move, as the doll climbed onto his chest. Seconds later, he felt a burning pain. When he finally regained control, he pulled up his shirt to find very long claw marks basically right across his stomach. Now, the woman contacted a medium who told them the spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins had attached itself to the doll. Believing it to be harmless, they gave the spirit permission to stay. But Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were called in shortly after, strongly disagreed. Lorraine insisted this was not the spirit of a child, but a very demonic entity masquerading as one's something, that's been kind of manipulating the girls into letting it remain. Now, fearing that the spirit's endgame was possession, the Warrens removed the doll from the apartment. They performed a cleansing and brought it back to their occult museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Now, to this day, Annabelle is locked in a glass case with a very large warning sign saying positively do not open. Ed often claimed the doll had been responsible for at least one man's demise. After a visitor to the museum mocked Annabelle, he supposedly then crashed his motorcycle and passed away hours later. This wasn't just a creepy toy. I mean, to the Warrens, Annabelle was one of the most dangerous artifacts they had ever encountered. Kind of something dark and intelligent that used innocence as a disguise. The Smurl haunting, a decade of demonic torment. Now imagine your family dog hurled across the room by invisible hands. Imagine hearing moans through the walls, being scratched by unseen claws, and even attacked in your sleep. Now, for the Smurl family, this wasn't imagination, it was their daily life. In 1974, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a duplex in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Almost immediately, strange activity began. Dark stains appeared on walls and floors, despite repeated cleaning. Now, unexplained foul odors kind of filled the home, often smelling like rotting flesh. The haunting escalated very quickly. Jack and Janet claimed they were physically attacked. Jack reported being scratched, choked, and even essayed by a demonic entity. Now, Janet described similar attacks as well. The couple's daughters were tormented by nightmares and saw black shadowy figures lurking in the corners of their rooms. Now, their dog was repeatedly picked up and thrown across the room by unseen forces. Loud pounding sounds kind of reverberated through the house at night, shaking the walls. Religious items were destroyed or thrown to the ground. Now, when the Warrens were called in, they determined the house was infested with demons. Ed claimed he recorded more than 40 hours of audio containing unexplained knocks, growls, and even screams. Priests attempted several exorcisms, but the attacks continued. The Smurls endured the haunting for nearly 15 years. They later wrote a book about their ordeal titled The Haunted, which was adapted into a made-for-TV movie in the early 90s. Critics dismissed their story as just exaggeration, but to the Smurl family, it was very real, and the trauma stayed with them long after they left the house. The Brookfield Devil Made Me Do It trial. Now, in 1981, an assassination shocked a quiet Connecticut town. But what stunned the nation was the defense. A man claimed he was possessed by a demon when he was unalived, and standing behind him in court were Ed and Lorraine Warren. But what stunned the nation was the defense. A man who claimed he was possessed by a demon. Now, Arn Cheyenne Johnson was a 19-year-old living with his fiancée Debbie Glatzel. Debbie's younger brother, David, had been experiencing terrifying possessions. He would thrash violently, growl in strange voices, and describe visions of a demonic beast with hooves and horns. The Warrens were brought in to help, of course. Now, during one exorcism attempt, Arn challenged the demon, shouting that it should leave David alone and take him instead. Now, according to the Warrens, that is exactly what happened. Months later, Arn was working with his landlord, Alan Bono. Now, the two men argued, and in a sudden fit, Arn basically hurt Bono multiple times with a weapon. Now, it actually unalived him. Now, witnesses described this behavior as possessed, claiming his eyes looked wild and his voice had changed. When the case went to trial, Arn's lawyer attempted a groundbreaking defense, not guilty by reason of demonic possession. This was the first time in U.S. history that such a plea was entered into court. The Warrens testified, insisting that a demon had indeed taken control of him. Now, the judge, however, rejected the argument, stating that demonic possession could never be proven in a court of law. Obviously. Now, Arn was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 10 to 20 years, though he served only just 5. Now, the case made international headlines and cemented the Warrens' reputation as controversial figures who weren't afraid to take the supernatural into the public eye. It also became the basis for the best-selling book, and decades later, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now, to this day, Arn and Debbie insist the possession was real, and the Warrens considered this case one of the most dangerous of their whole career. Now, which Warren case were you not familiar with? Maybe all, maybe none? and let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll creep you later. Take a trip with me on the most haunted train still running today. Buckle up, it's about to get bumpy. Blackpool Pleasure Beach Ghost Train. This is in England. They say the scariest rides aren't roller coasters. They're the ones that look harmless at first until you realize the terror doesn't come from the machinery at all. In Blackpool, England, there's a ride that's been operating since the 1930s. Generations have lined up for it, expecting just another creaky amusement ride. What they didn't expect, though, was a ghost that refuses to leave. It's called the Ghost Train at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Now, on the surface, it's just a funfair ride, a dark tunnel filled with jump scares and mechanical figures. But what makes this ride infamous is not the cheesy props or the dated horror music. It's the presence of a former ride operator who locals call Cloggy. Now, he earned the nickname because of his habit of wearing wooden clogs. Their heavy tapping echoing across the floor, if you know what those shoes are. Now, he passed away decades ago, yet visitors still hear the sound of those clogs pacing behind them. The Demon House, the Latoya Ammons case. A child was filmed walking backwards up a hospital wall, flipping over and landing on his feet. That was the moment a team of social workers and nurses stopped laughing at the Ammons family's claims and started calling in priests. In 2011, Latoya Ammons moved into a small rental home in Gary, Indiana, with her mother and 3 kids. From the start, things felt very wrong. Black flies swarmed their porch in the still of winter, shadows moved across the walls at night, then it escalated. Loud footsteps, disembodied voices, and strange oil-like substances dripping from blinds and doors. Her children began acting possessed. One son growled in a deep, unnatural voice and lifted off the ground floating. Another was taken to the hospital, and in front of social workers and doctors, he supposedly ran backwards up the wall to the ceiling. Multiple witnesses signed official reports saying they saw it themselves. The case caught the attention of the police, clergy, and media. Local police officers visited the house reporting strange voices on their recorders, malfunctions in their equipment, and even feelings of being watched. Priests were called to bless the house and later perform exorcisms on Latoya and her children. The home earned the nickname the 200 Demons House. Eventually, paranormal investigator Zak Bagans bought it, filmed a documentary inside, and later demolished it, claiming the energy was just too dark to leave standing. Why it baffled experts? Well, this wasn't just one family making wild claims. It was police captains, doctors, nurses, social workers writing sworn statements about things they couldn't explain. It became one of the most widely reported demonic possession cases in the US. There's a recent movie actually on Netflix called The Deliverance, which is about this case. It stars Glenn Close and Monique and that kid from Stranger Things, and they all actually gave their roles everything there was to give, so go watch it. It's very good. The possession of Clarita Villanueva. Now, 17-year-old Clarita was locked inside a Manila jail in 1953 when she suddenly started screaming in agony, clutching her arms and neck. Guards rushed in only to see fresh bite marks appearing on her skin as if teeth were sinking into her flesh, though no one was touching her. Clarita claimed she was under attack by 2 demonic beings, one a large hairy man and the other with an angelic face but twisted evil features. They bit, scratched, and tormented her, forcing her to speak in perfect English, a language she didn't even know. Now, her attacks didn't happen in the shadows. They erupted in broad daylight during court hearings, in front of police, journalists, doctors, and government officials. Witnesses swore they saw her convulse, scream obscenities, and collapse as invisible fangs tore into her body. News of her possession spread worldwide, covered by newspapers and documented in books. American missionary Lester Smurl was eventually called in, and after a series of prayers and exorcisms, the attack ceased. Now, why experts were baffled with this one? Well, doctors couldn't explain the spontaneous bite marks or her sudden fluency in English. Skeptics tried to claim it was mass hysteria or self-inflicted wounds, but the number of witnesses and the violent nature of her fits, left them completely shaken. The Smurl haunting. Imagine living in a home for over a decade, but instead of memories of birthdays and holidays, your walls echo with violent attacks, growls, and shadowy figures. That was life for the Smurl family in Pennsylvania between 1974 and 1989. For years, the Smurls claimed their home was plagued by a violent demonic entity. Now, they reported being scratched, shoved, and slapped. Janet Smurl described being pinned down by an invisible force, while her husband Jack claimed he was attacked in bed. Their daughter said they were touched by cold, unseen hands. On one occasion, Janet said she woke up with a perfect fish-shaped bruise on her arm, though no one had struck her. They heard loud banging, smelled foul odors of rotting flesh, and saw apparitions of black masses that darted through hallways. Investigators were brought in, including well-known demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, they claimed the Smurls were being attacked by a demon and that exorcisms were performed. The Catholic Church, however, was hesitant to fully endorse the case, leaving the family caught between science and faith. Now, their story was so public that it became a book and later a made-for-TV movie called The Haunted, and possibly you'll know the more popular film based on the story, The Conjuring series. Now, even after they moved, the family said the dark presence followed them. So why were experts so baffled in this one? Well, it wasn't just whispers. There were bruises, smells, and dozens of witnesses. Investigators documented strange recordings and cold spots, though skeptics suggested the family exaggerated for attention. To this day, no clear explanation actually exists. The exorcism of Anneliese Michelle. Now, this case is one of the darkest and most disturbing because the evidence still exists in uncut audio tapes. Now, in 1975, 23-year-old German student Anneliese Michelle began showing signs of what her family believed was possession. She had been diagnosed with epilepsy, but her condition escalated beyond seizures. She refused food, ripped clothes off her body, destroyed religious objects, and claimed she was inhabited by multiple demons, including Lucifer, Cain, and Judas. Now, over the next 10 months, priests performed 67 exorcism rites, many of which were recorded on tape. On those tapes, Anneliese could be heard growling, screaming, and speaking in multiple voices at once. Her family claimed she ate insects, licked her own urine from the floor, and even bit the head off of a bird. By mid-1976, she refused all food and water. She grew skeletal, covered in bruises, and on July 1st, she passed away of malnutrition and dehydration. She was only 68 pounds at the time of her passing. Now, the case went to trial with the tapes played in court. Her parents and the priests were charged with negligent homicide for allowing her to basically starve. Yet to this day, many people who hear those tapes insist no medical condition could explain her voice or her behavior. So why are experts baffled with this case? Well, the uncut audio remains, again, some of the most disturbing so-called demonic evidence in existence. Psychologists cite schizophrenia and epilepsy, but believers argue the recordings sound like multiple beings speaking at once, something far beyond any mental disorder. The Louviers' possession, Madeleine Bavent, and the Haunted Covenant. Now, our final case takes us back to 17th century France, where one of the most infamous possessions unfolded in the town of Louviers. Nuns began convulsing, cursing, and screaming blasphemies during church services. They claimed to be tormented by a demon named Ansitif. Now, some said they were forced to attend satanic rituals, participate in black masses, and even perform grotesque acts with priests they accused of witchcraft. Now, one of the central figures, Madeleine Bavent, testified that she had been forced by priests into signing a pact with the devil. She claimed she saw visions of crucifixions, disembowelments, and monstrous entities inside the covenant. Now, the scandal exploded into public view. Exorcisms were performed before large crowds with nuns kind of, writing on the floor, speaking in strange voices, and making claims of demonic marriages. Officials recorded the confessions and used them as evidence in witch trials. Though skeptics argued these possessions were mass hysteria combined with religious and political manipulation, the details remain deeply unsettling. The transcripts describe scenes that even modern horror movies would hesitate to show. So again, and lastly, why experts are baffled in this one? Well, it's because these were a handful of villagers in a dark corner. They were educated nuns, priests, and public officials in a structured religious environment. The convulsions, accusations, and so-called uncut confessions kind of became one of the best documented cases of mass demonic possession in history. These stories share a common thread: multiple witnesses, official reports, physical evidence, and recordings that still leave people unsettled and play rent-free in your minds. Whether you see them as mental illness, hysteria, or true encounters with evil, one thing is undeniable: the raw, uncut details have baffled experts for decades. And the question lingers: if even one of these cases, are real, what else could be lurking in the shadows, waiting to be caught on camera? Let me know your take on all of this. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you later. These creepy, abandoned theaters hiding evil secrets will either scare you into your nightmares or pique your curiosity enough to want to visit. Either way, get your popcorn ready for this one. The New Amsterdam Theater. This is the ghost in green. Now, she appeared in the still of the night, a woman in a shimmering green beaded gown gliding across the floor into darkness. Now, she was blowing a kiss and vanishing through a wall. That's what a night guard claimed he saw in the long-abandoned New Amsterdam Theater located in New York City. Now, the New Amsterdam Theater opened in 1903 as a Broadway jewel, but by the 1980s, it lay in ruins. Now, mushrooms grew on the walls, water flooded the floors, and the once golden ceilings rotted away and rusted. During restoration, in the 1990s, when the theater was nothing but a decaying shell, workers and guards began to see her, a glamorous figure carrying a small blue bottle. Many believe this is Olive Thomas. David Lang disappearance, a man who walked into thin air. One moment he was waving to a neighbor, the next he was simply gone. In 1880, on September 23rd, on a farm near Gallatin, Tennessee, David Lang was walking through his field in full view of his wife, children, and a visiting judge. Now the weather was clear, no trees nearby, no structures to, obstruct the view. He was mid-step and then simply just disappeared into thin air. His wife screamed, the children ran, the judge stood stunned. They all saw it. Two men, even on a buggy nearby, also witnessed this happen and ran over to the spot where he disappeared. Now, the initial thought from everyone was that he just simply fell into a hole, which, yeah, that was my initial thought also. Now, search teams combed the field for weeks. They dug trenches, they brought in dogs, not a single footprint beyond where he'd been last seen. No hole, no sinkhole, nothing, no signs of struggle. The only thing left behind was silence and confusion. But then things got really weird. Months later, the grass where Lang vanished began to discolor in a perfect circle. It turned yellow, brittle, and wouldn't grow. Animals refused to step into it. Horses would shy away. Even birds avoided flying overhead. A year after his disappearance, his daughter stood in the spot where he disappeared and said she thought he heard him say something. His children actually claimed they could hear faint cries in David's voice echoing from the empty space where he vanished. It was as if he was trapped somewhere else, caught in a place between places. Now, some researchers have connected the incident to theories of dimensional, rifts, spontaneous teleportation, or even time slips. Now, Charles Fort, the grandfather of paranormal research, cited it in his writings on unexplained disappearances. Skeptics tried to debunk it, but the reports and witness statements remain eerily consistent. Huska Castle, the fortress built to seal hell. You've heard of castles being built to keep enemies out, but this one, it was actually built to keep something in. Huska Castle, also known as the portal to hell, tucked into the dense Czech forest north of Prague, was constructed in the 13th century over a yawning black hole in the earth. Locals said it was bottomless, that demonic creatures crawled out of it, that people who got too close were dragged inside. So what did the king do? Well, he built a castle, not to live in, not for war, but as a lid, a seal, a trap to stop whatever was trying to escape from the depths below. No water source, no fortifications, no kitchen, no strategic value, literally just a chapel built directly on top of the hole. So get this, when the hole was first discovered, prisoners were offered pardons if they agreed to be lowered inside the hole. So they threw prisoners into the pit, again, offering them pardons if and only if they survived. Obviously that makes sense, right? Well, most didn't. The ones who did survive came out screaming, aged overnight, faces twisted in fear, rambling about clawed beasts and shrieking voices. The first volunteer was said to have only lasted literally seconds before screaming to be pulled back out. And yeah, once they pulled him out, it's alleged that he was aged beyond recognition. Hair turned completely white. He was rambling about creatures with bat-like wings crawling up the walls. And what's creepier is that the castle's chapel is built directly, literally over that hole, almost like it's a seal. The windows there are all fake. They're just kind of painted to look like windows. Fast forward to World War II, the bad guys took over the castle, drawn by its occult reputation. They sealed off entire rooms, performed rituals, and reportedly used the site for brutal human experiments. To this day, no records exist of what they were doing, but locals say the screaming started again. Visitors do report sudden blackouts, disembodied growling. Paranormal teams say cameras fall, audio gets corrupted, and investigators have been scratched and gagged by unseen hands. This place is literally open to visitors today. One of you, please go. Let us know how you make out. The Bell Witch, the spirit that spoke and hurt people. Now, this is America's greatest ghost story. Imagine a ghost so powerful it spoke in full sentences. So violent, it slapped and tormented a family and even confessed to execution. The Bell Witch haunting of the early 1800s is still one of the most terrifying and well-documented poltergeist cases in American history. It all started in a small cabin in Adams, Tennessee. John Bell and his family began experiencing knocks on the walls, strange voices whispering in the night, and chains dragging across the floors. Now, at first they thought thought it was an animal, right? And then the voices started to speak. The entity, soon known as the Bell Witch, called out names, it recited sermons, it mocked the family's prayers. It had intelligence, like personality, and a really brutal sense of humor, but it saved its worst torment for the Bell's daughter, Betsy. She was slapped, scratched, and even lifted by her hair. I mean, her body showed marks and her screams echoed into the woods. Words got out, of course, and then Andrew Jackson, a general at the time, and later the 7th US president actually, decided to see for himself. I mean, his wagon froze on the road, the horses wouldn't move, then a voice from nowhere said, "Let him come through, I've been waiting." Like, okay, ghosty, like, say less, but also what? Like, that night, Jackson's men were attacked by invisible forces. I mean, one of them had his firearm torn from his hands and thrown across the room. By morning, Jackson was gone. He later reportedly said, "I would rather fight the entire British army than spend another night with the Bell Witch." I mean, that's extreme. I just feel like that's so dramatic. But anyway, years later, John Bell was found passed away in his bed. A small vial of black liquid was discovered in the cupboard. No one knew what it was. When a drop was given to a cat, the cat passed away instantly. I mean, the witch claimed she had poisoned him. So the Bell Witch didn't fade away. The cave near the old Bell farm is actually still active, and investigators report seeing orbs, hearing laughter, and actually being physically touched by something they can't see. The Pollock twins, a haunting case of reincarnation. Now, 2 girls pass away, okay? 1 year later, their parents give birth to twins who seem to remember their sister's life in perfect details. Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock were unalived in a very tragic car accident in 1957 in Hexham, England. Now, their parents were shattered, of course, but in 1958, Florence and John Pollock welcomed twin girls again, Jennifer and Gillian. That's when things got really weird. From an early age, the twins began to talk about their passed on sisters. They asked for toys that belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline without actually being told the toys even existed. They remembered the names of classmates and locations in a town they never visited. Gillian once pointed at a school and said, "That's where I used to go." Jennifer had birthmarks identical to Jacqueline's scars. At 4 years old, the twins passed the crash site and started screaming. They clung to each other, crying. I mean, the car, it's coming to get us. Their parents were stunned. They hadn't spoken about the accident. They haven't even told them about their sisters, period. They had moved towns to avoid the trauma altogether. No one had told the girls anything. Even creepier, Jennifer would speak in Jacqueline's tone and handwriting. The girls would act out scenes from their sisters' lives, but by the age of 5, the memories began to fade slowly, as if the connection was slipping away. Now, Dr. Ian Stevenson, a really respected psychiatrist who studied over 2,000 reincarnation cases, investigated the twins in person. He concluded it was one of the most compelling cases he had ever seen. I mean, the twins had no psychiatric conditions, there was no coaching, and their knowledge could not be explained. I mean, the story remains one of the strongest pieces of reincarnation evidence to date. The Dyatlov Pass incident, a mystery buried in ice. 9 very seasoned hikers went into the Russian mountains. Now, what was found weeks later still haunts the world today. In 1959, a group of experienced Soviet hikers led by Igor Dyatlov trekked into the snowy wilderness of the mountains. Now, their goal was to reach Mount Odorin. But something went horribly wrong. When rescue teams finally found their campsite, the hikers' tent had been slashed open from the inside. Now, footprints led away barefoot in the snow into like sub-zero temperatures. Their bodies were scattered across the landscape, some frozen in poses of terror. But it wasn't just hypothermia. One hiker had a crushed skull, 2 had shattered ribs, injuries equivalent to a car crash, but no external wounds. One woman's tongue and eyes were missing. Their clothes contained strange burns and tested positive for radiation. I mean, even stranger, they had orange skin, white hair, and some of the hikers' watches had all stopped. But get this, like at the exact same time. For decades, theories have ranged from, infrasound like induced panic to secret Soviet weapons testing to avalanche cover-ups to alien abduction. But the Russian government's official ruling, well, a compelling natural force. No further explanation, sure, Jan. But no natural force explains crushed bones without bruises or or radiation on clothing, or why seasoned hikers would rip open their own tent in a blizzard and flee barefoot into the night. I mean, this one is the most studied and disturbing mysteries of the 20th century, and to this day, no one really knows what happened. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Imagine checking into a hotel so haunted that it inspired one of the most terrifying horror novels ever written. That's the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, the real-life inspiration behind Stephen King's The Shining. One chilling story goes like this. Guests in room 217 have woken up to see a woman standing at the foot of their bed. She doesn't scream, she doesn't move, she simply stares. Her name is said to be Elizabeth Wilson, a housekeeper who nearly passed away in a gas explosion in that very room in 1911. Guests have reported their luggage mysteriously unpacked, lights flickering on their own, and even blankets being tucked tightly around them at night, like a ghostly maid still kind of tending to her duties. But that's not the only room that terrifies visitors. Room 401 is haunted by a ghost named Lord Dunraven, who originally owned the land before the Stanley was built. Guests have complained of being watched, hearing footsteps pacing, and even having their jewelry stolen by unseen hands. The children's laughter in the hallways, despite no kids being booked on that floor, only makes it worse. Stephen King and his wife stayed here in 1974, and during the night, he reportedly dreamed of his son running through the endless hallways screaming. That nightmare became the seed for The Shining. Ever since, Stanley has been a magnet for ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. Even the cast of Ghost Hunters caught a piano playing itself in the ballroom. For decades, terrified visitors have left in the middle of the night, unable to endure the strange voices, cold spots, and the overwhelming sense of dread that seems to seep through the walls. Some even say that once you step into the Stanley, the hotel decides if it wants you to leave or stay forever. The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Guests call it America's most haunted hotel, and they're not exaggerating. The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas has been the site of tragic demises, sinister experiments, and an endless parade of restless spirits. But the most terrifying story starts with a man named Norman Baker. In the 1930s, Baker, a con artist masquerading as a doctor, bought the hotel and turned it into a cancer hospital. He claimed he had a cure, but what patients really got was torment. Baker injected patients with dangerous concoctions, locked them in rooms, and let them waste away. Hundreds passed away inside the Crescent's walls, their bodies buried in the basement, now known as the morgue. Guests today say they hear the moans of those patients echoing through the halls. Some report seeing shadowy figures in hospital gowns wandering aimlessly at night. Now, the most famous ghost is Michael, a stonemason who fell to his demise while building the hotel in 1885. Guests in room 218 say they've seen his figure appear suddenly, slamming doors, shaking the bed, or even pushing people. Then there's the ghost of a little girl in a Victorian dress who often appears near the stairwells. Some say she's looking for her mother, as others believe she's one of Baker's forgotten victims. One hotel employee swears she saw the girl run across the lobby only to vanish in front of their eyes. In recent years, archaeologists actually uncovered jars of human tissue buried on the property, direct evidence of Baker's gruesome experiments. This discovery confirmed that the Crescent isn't just haunted by rumors, but by the real suffering of the people who passed away there. If you check in, don't be surprised if you hear whispers at 3 a.m. or if the elevator suddenly takes you to the basement on its own. The Crescent Hotel has a way of showing you its secrets, whether you want to see them or not. The Queen Mary Hotel in Long Beach, California. Now, the Queen Mary isn't just a hotel, it's a massive retired ocean liner that sailed the seas from 1936 to 1967. But once it was docked in Long Beach and converted into a floating hotel, the hauntings began to spill out. The Queen Mary is said to be one of the most haunted places in the world, with at least 150 spirits roaming its corridors. But the scariest stories are centered around its engine room and swimming pool. In the engine room, door 13 has claimed the life of at least 2 men, one crushed to demise during a drill. Now, guests and crew report seeing a man in blue overalls walking near the door, only for him to vanish into thin air. The temperature drops instantly, and sometimes greasy handprints appear on the walls where no one was standing. Then there's the haunted swimming pool. Though it's been drained for years, visitors report the sound of splashing, laughter, and wet footprints appearing on the tiles. 2 women are said to haunt the spot, both actually passed in mysterious circumstances in the pool. One ghost, nicknamed Jackie, is often heard calling for her parents. Some guests claim to have recorded her voice even. Now, during World War II, the the Queen Mary carried troops that was nicknamed the Great Ghost. Hundreds of men passed away aboard and many never left. Now today, paranormal investigators have captured everything from, screams in the infirmary to shadowy figures crossing hallways in front of startled guests. Staying overnight means sleeping among restless souls who never completed their voyage. One former hotel guest described being woken up by a man standing over her bed, dripping wet, staring blankly before vanishing. Another swore her bathroom lights flickered on and off repeatedly with the sound of running water, but the faucets were bone dry. The Queen Mary's haunted reputation is so infamous that even skeptics walk away shaken. The Mizpah Hotel, this is in Tonopah, Nevada. Now, if you've ever wanted to sleep in a room where a ghost might crawl into bed with you, the Mizpah Hotel in Nevada might be your nightmare come true. The most infamous ghost here is known as the Lady in Red. According to legend, she was a working woman of the night. Hopefully you catch my drift. Anyway, she was a woman who lived and worked at that hotel during the early 1900s. Depending on the story, she was there assassinated by a jealous lover or actually beaten to her demise by a client. Her spirit never left though. Guests in the Lady in the Red room report waking up to find pearls scattered across the floor as if she left behind her broken necklace. Some men have even claimed to feel her climbing into bed beside them, whispering softly in their ear before vanishing. Others say she leaves behind the strong scent of roses or expensive perfume even. But the Lady in Red isn't the only ghost stalking the Mizpah. There are stories of children running through the hallways, laughing one minute, crying the next. The Phantom Miner is said to wander the basement, a reminder, that this rough gold rush past that they had. Now, the Mizpah's history makes its hauntings all too believable. Built in 1907, it was once one of the most luxurious hotels in Nevada, but also sat in a mining town filled with violence, gambling, and sudden demises. Countless tragedies unfolded behind its walls, given birth to restless spirits. The hotel closed in 1999 and sat abandoned for years. During this time, paranormal investigators documented eerie whispers, slamming doors, and even a figure in a red dress captured on film. Since reopening in 2011, guests continue to leave with stories of encounters that prove the Lady in Red has no intention of ever checking out. The Crescent City's Hotel Monteleone in New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is already known as one of the most haunted cities in America, but the Hotel Monteleone might be its most unsettling treasure. This French Quarter landmark has been family owned since 1886, and over the decades, countless guests have sworn it's alive with spirits. The creepiest stories revolve around the 14th floor, though technically it's actually the 13th floor that was, renumbered to avoid superstition. Guests here have seen ghostly children running through the halls, laughing and vanishing through the walls. The most famous of these spirits is a boy named Maurice Begur, who passed away in the hotel after a fever. Now, his parents were longtime guests, and when his mother returned, she swore she could still hear Maurice calling to her. To this day, guests say they hear a child's voice saying "mummy," in the still of night. The hotel also has a haunted restaurant area where patrons see men in tuxedos from another era raising glasses before disappearing. Elevators are known to stop on the wrong floor, doors opening to empty hallways filled with sudden cold air. Authors like Tennessee Williams and William Faulkner stayed here, and some claim the atmosphere of the hotel itself fuels creativity, though others believe it's because the spirits of the deceased linger so close to the living. One guest reported waking up to see a man standing at the foot of her bed, dressed in a 1920s suit. She blinked and he was gone, but the strong smell of cigar smoke filled the room, even though smoking is banned in the hotel. The Monteleone embraces its haunted reputation, but make no mistake, this is not just marketing. Paranormal groups have reportedly captured strange orbs, phantom voices, and even full body apparitions. Now, in a city overflowing with ghost stories, the Monteleone, still manages to terrify. Which haunted hotel would you stay at for a weekend if you could? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you later. Have you ever been to Florida? Well, if you were planning your next getaway there, this might make you reconsider. These creepy abandoned places still holding ghosts will make you cancel that flight you got booked. The old Chattahoochee State Hospital. Patients swore they saw faceless figures crawling along the walls at night. Nurses whispered of children crying in empty wards. And even decades after the hospital's closure, trespassers have come out pale, shaken, and swearing they heard voices in the halls. The Chattahoochee State Hospital, also known as Florida State Hospital, was once considered progressive when it opened in the 19th century, but by the 20th century, it gained a reputation as one of the darkest psychiatric facilities cities in the south. Reports surfaced of overcrowding so severe that patients were crammed into filthy rooms, chained to beds, or locked away in padded cells. Electroshock therapy and lobotomies were used regularly. Thousands of patients lived, and many passed away inside its walls. Smurl family haunting. Now imagine being yanked awake in the middle of the night, not by a sound, but by the hand that isn't actually there. Fingers digging into your arm, leaving bruises that seem to burn into your skin. That was the reality of Jack and Janet Smurl in Pennsylvania during the 1980s, when their quiet family home transformed into a stage for one of the most disturbing possession cases ever reported. The Smurls moved into their duplex in 1974, hoping for a fresh start. At first, the disturbances were very subtle. Tools vanished from Jack's workbench, a strange odor, something like rotting garbage mixed with sulfur filled the air, but vanished as quickly as it came. Now soon, scratching noises began echoing through the walls at night. At first, they dismissed it as just plumbing, or maybe rodents even, but then the attacks escalated. The family reported that their German Shepherd was thrown against the wall by an invisible force. Loud, guttural growls came from empty rooms. Most chilling of all, Jack himself claimed he was actually attacked in his bed. Scratches and bruises appeared across his body overnight. Janet described being basically by unseen hands while she was basically prayed. Now, the Warrens, the famous paranormal investigators, were brought in after multiple failed attempts at cleansing the house. Ed Warren reported seeing a black, shapeless mass that moved with intelligence, shifting through the walls and flickering out of sight. Lorraine Warren, a self-described clairvoyant, said the house was infested with a powerful demonic presence. Even the Catholic Church became involved, but 2 separate exorcisms failed. Neighbors reported hearing screams echoing through the home when no one was inside. Visitors were attacked, scratched, and shoved. The Smurls eventually abandoned the property, but their torment followed them. The family's case became so notorious, it inspired books, interviews, and eventually even a Hollywood retelling. The scariest part? Well, many locals still believe the house carries a curse long after the family moved away. The Enfield poltergeist. Now, what would you do if your 11-year-old daughter floated off her bed in the dead of night? For Peggy Hodgson, a single mother of 4 in Enfield, London, this wasn't a question. It was her life. Now, in August 1977, Peggy heard her daughter screaming. When she entered their bedroom, she froze. Furniture was sliding across the floor without anyone touching it. A heavy chest of drawers moved towards the door as if trying to trap the children inside. Peggy rushed forward, pushed with all her strength, but said it was like fighting against another person. What began as knocking and scraping soon turned into full-scale terror. Toys flew through the air, chairs slid across the room. Janet, only 11 years old, was repeatedly hurled from her bed as if tossed by invisible hands. Neighbors, police officers, and eventually reporters witnessed it firsthand. One officer actually signed an affidavit stating she had seen a chair move across the floor by itself. Even more disturbing were the voices. Investigators captured recordings of Janet speaking in a very deep, gravely voice that sounded like a grown man. I mean, the voice identified itself as Bill, a man who claimed he had passed away in the house years before. The Hodgsons insisted their daughter could not fake such, guttural tones, especially for hours at a time. Now, skeptics argued the children may have faked parts of the haunting, and indeed, Janet later admitted to exaggerating some events, but many moments had dozens of credible witnesses. The case attracted worldwide attention, becoming one of the most famous possessions and poltergeist incidents ever recorded. Whether it was a hoax or horror, the Enfield case remains chilling because of how much it was documented. Photographs showed Janet literally mid-air, apparently levitating. Audio recordings of the demonic voices still exist to this day. I mean, this wasn't just whispers in the dark. This was a possession broadcast to the world. The exorcism of Roland Doe. Now, in the late 1940s, a teenage boy in Maryland became the unwilling inspiration for one of the most terrifying movies of all time, known as Roland Doe. Now, his story would later inspire The Exorcist. But the reality behind the film is even darker. It began with scratching noises in the walls, then objects moving on their own. Now, Roland Roland's family was deeply religious, and when his aunt introduced him to a Ouija board, things spiraled. After her sudden passing, Roland began displaying very violent mood swings. His bed shook violently as if someone was trying to throw him out of it. Scratches appeared on his chest, forming words like hell and evil. Now, priests were called, of course, and what they documented remains disturbing. Roland would snarl in voices that wasn't his own. He threw priests across the room with very unnatural strength. During one session, he actually tore a bed spring from his mattress and used it to slash a priest's arm wide open. Multiple exorcisms were attempted over several months. Witnesses reported the boy screaming Latin phrases that he had never learned. When holy water touched his skin, blistering welts appeared. I mean, the final ritual ended when Roland suddenly kind of cried out that Satan was gone. Afterward, the boy lived a normal life and rarely spoke of what happened. What makes this story so haunting, though, is that dozens of written records exist from priests and witnesses. This wasn't just folklore, it was a case taken seriously by the Catholic Church. Whether Roland was possessed or suffering psychological trauma, something deeply disturbing definitely happened in that home. The Tanacu exorcism. Now, in 2005, a young Romanian nun named Irina Cornisi began hearing voices. Now, fellow nuns claimed she was possessed, while others later argued she suffered from schizophrenia. But instead of receiving, medical treatment, she was subjected to a ritual that shocked the world. At the Tanacu Monastery, Father Daniel Corgonot believed he was battling demons. He and 4 other nuns bound Irina to a wooden cross, gagged her with a towel, and left her without food or water for days while praying over her. Witnesses claim she screamed, begged for release, and then fell unnaturally silent. By the time she was untied, Irina was passed away. The official autopsy blamed adrenaline injections and neglect, but locals whispered that she had indeed been possessed and that the exorcism either freed her or unalived her. Now, the case drew worldwide outrage, of course. Father Daniel was sentenced actually to 7 years in prison. The monastery was shut down completely, yet villagers continued to defend him, insisting that, he had actually tried to save Irina from demonic forces. To this day, many Romanians remain very divided. I mean, was she a victim of just mental illness that got no treatment? Was she a victim of religious extremism? Or was she a victim of a genuine possession gone horribly wrong? The Tanacu exorcism is terrifying because it honestly does blur the line between faith and fear, and it leaves us with a very chilling reminder. What humans do in the name of God is just as terrifying as any demon. The Ammons haunting in the demon house. Now, in 2011, a small house on Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana, became the center of one of the most chilling possession cases of modern times. Latoya Ammons and her 3 children moved in. And honestly, from the start, the house seemed completely wrong. I mean, in the dead of winter, black flies swarmed the porch, which is weird. Doors creaked open on their own. Very heavy footsteps echoed from the basement when no one was even there. I mean, then the children began acting very strange. One son spoke in a voice that wasn't his own, his eyes literally rolling back until only the white part of his eyes were visible. Another child was reported to have levitated during a sleepover, which was witnessed by friends who fled in terror, of course. Social workers and police officers later claimed to actually see very disturbing phenomena themselves. I mean, a medical professional even reported seeing one of the boys walk backwards up a wall in the hospital. I mean, flipping over his grandmother before landing back on his feet. Nurses screamed and they fled the room, rightfully so. I mean, the case was investigated by local authorities, documented in hundreds of official pages of police reports and medical notes. Eventually, the family just fled. I mean, unable to endure the torment any longer, which is fair. The house itself became infamous, nicknamed the Demon House. Paranormal investigator Zak Bagans later purchased the property and he filmed a documentary inside and then had it demolished, claiming it was too dangerous dangerous to remain standing. The case is horrifying because of how many professionals, cops, doctors, social workers put their names on the record, swearing they had seen things science just simply could not explain. To this day, the Demon House remains one of the most compelling modern possession cases ever reported. There was actually a movie recently, I think that's on Netflix, so go give it a watch.
Number 5. Zak Bagans. Famous ghost hunters have left quite the mark on our understanding of the paranormal, and one such figure is Zak. Known for his work on the popular TV series Ghost Adventures, he has become a prominent investigator in the world of the supernatural. Zak is the host, lead investigator, and an executive producer of Ghost Adventures, and with his paranormal investigation team, travels to domestic and international locations rumored to be haunted in search of evidence proving the existence of the supernatural. After graduating from film school in Michigan, Zak moved to Nevada to pursue a career in documentary filmmaking. There he met fellow Ghost Adventures investigator Aaron Goodwin, and in 2004, Zak founded the world's largest paranormal organization, the Ghost Adventures Crew, which consists of thousands of members. His approach to exploring the unknown has both captivated and polarized audiences. Zak and his team tend to travel to reportedly haunted locations, armed with an array of gadgets like EMF meters, spirit boxes, and night vision cameras. His mythology combines scientific instruments with the, experimental, encouraging entities to communicate through these devices. While skeptics often question the validity of such tools, Zak approaches each investigation with unwavering belief in the existence of the paranormal. In his many years as a ghost hunter, Zak has confronted a variety of supernatural phenomena, from apparitions and electronic voice phenomena, or more commonly known as EVP, to shadow figures and poltergeist activity. His encounters often involve him and his team experiencing unsettling events firsthand. These experiences can be intense, and some argue that they occasionally verge on sensationalism, blurring the line between investigation and entertainment. Zak isn't without his controversies, though. Critics have accused him of exploiting the suffering of entities and trivializing the field of paranormal research. The question of whether his shows are truly investigative or merely sensational entertainment remains, a subject of debate, myself included. Regardless of the controversy though, Zak has undoubtedly made the paranormal world much more accessible to the general public. His passionate pursuit of the supernatural and willingness to dive headfirst into the unknown have drawn millions of viewers into the mysterious realm of ghosts and hauntings. He's played a pivotal role in popularizing paranormal investigation and fostering a growing community of enthusiasts eager to explore the unexplained. So while Zak might not be universally embraced by the skeptics or purists within the field of paranormal research, he undeniably stands as one of the most recognizable and influential ghost hunters in recent history. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or, like me, somewhere in between, his impact on the exploration of the supernatural world can't be denied. Number 4. Grant Wilson. Known for his role on the TV series Ghost Hunters, Grant has definitely left a mark on the realm of paranormal investigation. His path to becoming a renowned ghost hunter was one filled with curiosity, skepticism, and a passion for unraveling the mysteries of the unseen. So Grant, along with his partner Jason Hawes, co-founded the Atlantic Paranormal Society, or TAPS for short, back in 1990. Their mission was clear: to investigate and document reports of paranormal activity using a scientific and logical approach. Unlike many other ghost hunters who relied heavily on mysticism, these two brought a refreshing dose of skepticism and methodical investigation to the field. Their TV show Ghost Hunters, which premiered back in 2004, became a sensation. It allowed viewers to witness their real-time investigations of supposedly haunted locations, adding a sense of authenticity to the paranormal game. Wilson's calm and, methodical demeanor balanced out the tension and suspense of the investigations, earning him a reputation as a rational and level-headed investigator. One of Grant's key contributions was the use of common-sense explanations and debunking techniques. He approached each case with a debunk-first mentality, aiming to rule out any logical or scientific explanations before considering the paranormal. This approach resonated with both skeptics and believers, as it offered a more balanced perspective on the unexplained. Now, over the years, Grant and his team encountered a wide range of phenomena, from mysterious voices and unexplained shadows to full-bodied apparitions. Their investigations took them to various iconic locations, in many cases presented puzzling evidence that kept the audiences intrigued. The success of Ghost Hunters made paranormal investigation, along with other shows, accessible to a broader audience. Despite the popularity though, Grant has made a surprising decision. Back in 2012, he announced his departure from the show, leaving fans and colleagues perplexed. He cited, personal reasons and a desire to explore new avenues in his life. This move was met with mixed reactions, as he had become a beloved figure in the world of paranormal TV. While his departure left a void on Ghost Hunters, Grant's legacy as a pioneer in the field of paranormal investigation remains intact. His commitment to applying scientific rigor to the unexplained and his dedication to sharing the process with the public reshaped how we approach ghost hunting. His departure from the show served served as a reminder that, even in the realm of the supernatural, change and evolution are constants. In the world of famous ghost hunters, Grant Wilson's impact is undeniable. His measured and methodical approach, combined with his willingness to question the paranormal, has left an enduring legacy. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, Grant's journey is a testament to the power of curiosity, skepticism, and the pursuit of understanding the mysteries that lie beyond our ordinary perception. And so, in the realm of ghost hunters, Grant Wilson stands as a figure who encouraged us to question the unknown, always searching for rational explanations before embracing the paranormal. His journey, like the investigations he conducted, reminds us that even in the shadows, there's always light to be found. Number 3. Amy Bruni. Venturing into the intriguing realm of, famous ghost hunters, we encounter the remarkable journey of Amy. So with a background in hospitality management, she might not be the most conventional choice for a paranormal investigator, but her experiences have made her a prominent figure in the field. Amy is perhaps best known for her role on Ghost Hunters, where she worked as an investigator and co-host. I don't think I need to explain the origins of the show again, do I? So Amy's calm demeanor and analytical approach brought a refreshing perspective to the often, sensationalized world of paranormal TV. What sets Amy apart, though, is her empathetic approach to ghost hunting. She's not just there to collect data or debunk phenomena, she aims to understand the spirit stories and histories. Her background in hospitality has taught her the importance of human connection, and she often seeks to establish a rapport with the entities she encounters. Throughout her career, Amy has explored numerous iconic and supposedly haunted locations, from historic homes to abandoned asylums. The investigations have yielded a wide range of experiences, from unexplained noises and ghostly apparitions to compelling EVP recordings. And while some skeptics remain unconvinced, there's no denying that Amy's work has resonated with those open to the idea of paranormal encounters. In addition to her work on ghost hunters, Amy has continued to investigate the unknown through other projects and her own organization, Strange Escapes. Her goal is not only to explore the mysteries of the paranormal, but also to share her experiences with the public through events and tours. Amy's journey through the world of ghost hunting serves as a reminder that this field isn't limited to traditional investigators. Once again, her background in hospitality, her empathetic approach, and her commitment to understanding the stories behind the hauntings have contributed to her success. While skeptics and believers continue to debate the validity of paranormal encounters, Amy's work has made the mysterious and unexplained much more relatable to a wider audience. So once again, in the fascinating tapestry of famous ghost hunters in our list today, Amy stands as a figure who brings both her unique perspective and genuine curiosity to the exploration of the paranormal. Her journey serves as a testament to the idea that anybody, regardless of your background, you can find yourselves drawn into the world of the unexplained. In the end, it's the human connection, the stories, and the mysteries that drive us to seek answers in the shadows. Number 2, Ryan and Shane. Right away, my brain reminded me of their iconic "We're here for the cult stuff" catchphrase, because my best friend has been obsessed with this duo since their BuzzFeed days. What's that other one? "Hey there, demons, it's me, ya boy." That's one I tend to quote at my scare acting job a lot. So when it comes to famous ghost hunters, a newer generation has emerged. At the forefront are Ryan Bergara and Shane Madej. I apologize if I got the last names wrong, I'm just like Ryan and Shane. These two breathed fresh life into the world of paranormal investigations through their show BuzzFeed Unsolved, which was a blend of humor, skepticism, and genuine curiosity that captured the imagination of audiences worldwide. What set Ryan and Shane apart, though, from everything else was their unique dynamic. So we've got Ryan, the believer. He's seeking to explore the supernatural, while Shane, the skeptic, brings a healthy dose of rationality to their investigations. Their witty banter and opposing viewpoints add an entertaining twist to the, typical ghost hunting formula. It's not just about seeking answers, it's about engaging viewers in the quest for the unknown. BuzzFeed Unsolved used to cover a wide range of paranormal phenomena, from haunted locations and unsolved mysteries to cryptids and extraterrestrial encounters. The show's approach wasn't about proving or debunking, it was about exploring the stories, the legends, and the unexplained events that have fascinated people for generations. Their investigation took them to quite a few iconic places, including the notoriously haunted Queen Mary and the Winchester Mystery House, which I've talked about a lot. Feel free to watch some other videos, they're great. They've encountered, strange occurrences from unexplained noises, chilling EVPs, mysterious shadows, and eerie visual anomalies. The show is as much about the storytelling as it is about the paranormal investigation. One of the show's key strengths was its accessibility. It spoke to a generation that grew up with the internet and social media. Ryan and Shane interact with their audience, involving them in the mysteries they explore. They acknowledge the skepticism and the wonder, creating a sense of community around the unknown. The show's success also used to lie in its willingness to admit when the answers remain elusive. It didn't always neatly wrap up each investigation with a clear conclusion, but it would leave room for the unknown, encouraging viewers to form their own opinions. Hey, in a field where certainty is often elusive, I like, an honest approach. Ryan and Shane have successfully tapped into the zeitgeist of their time, where the line between skepticism and belief is blurred, and where the allure of the unexplained still captivates us. They bring a sense of humor and humanity to ghost hunting, making it more relatable for a broader audience. Hey, whether you're a true believer or a die-hard skeptic, their exploration of the paranormal provides something for everybody. Trust me. In the world of famous ghost hunters, these two have redefined the genre. They've shown that the fascination with the supernatural is as strong as ever, and that it can be explored with a sense of wonder and humor. So nowadays, like many popular personalities, they left BuzzFeed far behind, but now continue their adventures in their own show, titled Ghost Files. 10 out of 10, recommend. Number 1, Andrew Green. So in the history files of famous ghost hunters, the name Andrew Green stands as a lesser known but significant figure. Born all the way back in 1927 in the United Kingdom, Green had a profound impact on the world of paranormal investigation. His story is one of curiosity, dedication, and a relentless pursuit of the supernatural. Green's journey into the realm of ghost hunting began in his teenage years, when he had a series of inexplicable experiences, including a vivid encounter with the apparition of his mother shortly after her passing. These encounters ignited his interest in the unexplained, and he decided to delve into the world of the paranormal. What makes Andrew's story particularly intriguing is that he didn't confine his investigations to the, well-trodden path of haunted houses and spooky locales. He focused on researching and documenting spontaneous and repeatable apparitional experiences, which he referred to as crises apparitions. Green believed that these apparitions often occurred during times of intense emotion or crises, such as when someone experienced a life-threatening situation or was on the brink of death. He spent years collecting and cataloging cases of crises apparitions, aiming to find patterns and commonalities in these extraordinary events. He meticulously documented over 400 cases of apparitions, using his background in research and statistics to analyze the data. His work led him to propose the idea that these apparitions were not mere hallucinations, but represented a form of communication from the other side. Green's dedication to this research culminated in the publication of his book, Our Unseen Guest, back in 1966, which presented his findings and theories on apparitions. The book received both praise and criticism, but it undeniably sparked a new level of interest in the study of these paranormal phenomena. And what's also remarkable about Andrew is he didn't limit his investigations to the supernatural. He was a trained solicitor, which equipped him with the skills to approach these cases with a critical and analytical mindset. His background in law lent an air of credibility to his research and made his work more accessible to skeptics. Despite facing skepticism and sometimes outright rejection from the scientific community, Andrew's work laid the foundation for further research into crises apparitions and other paranormal phenomena. His story is a reminder that, the pursuit of the unknown often requires a steadfast dedication to curiosity, a willingness to explore the unexplained, and the courage to venture into uncharted territory. So, in the vast tapestry of famous ghost hunters, he might not be a household name, but his legacy lives on.
Number 5. The Borley Rectory. The Borley Rectory is an old London estate that has the unique distinction of being considered the most haunted building in the United Kingdom. No big deal or anything. Almost immediately after its constructions, the stories of hauntings started to come out. A local legend says that in the 12th century, a priest and a nun had an affair, and when they were discovered, the nun was bricked up and left to rot in the nearby church. And since then, there's been all manner of legend about her spirit roaming, seemingly in the halls of the rectory. The film The Nun could possibly be based on this. In 1900, the 4 daughters of the estate owner all said they saw a nun wandering around the estate at night. When they tried to speak to her, they got no response. The family had repeatedly claimed they'd seen this nun around their property, and at one occasion, what they thought was the spectral apparition of a horse-drawn carriage with a headless rider. From there on, there was constant reportings of bizarre sounds, strange shadows. In 1927, the original family owning the estate had all passed, and a new family moved in and immediately started experiencing hauntings all the same. The new family, the Smiths, discovered a human skull in the cupboard in a brown bag shortly after unpacking. They reported poltergeist behavior like unexplained footsteps, lights flickering around them, and the same sightings of headless specters. After only 2 years, the Smith family left the rectory, unable to deal with the hauntings present. The next family, the Foysters, experienced, well, wouldn't you know it, all the same things. Objects flying around their home, and on one occasion, claimed that their daughter was attacked by something horrible. They swiftly moved out as well, and the last owner of the rectory would be Captain Gregson, who accidentally lit the estate ablaze while unpacking, knocking over a lantern. Although an insurance report claims that they think the fire was started intentionally, perhaps in a desperate attempt to cast away whatever evil remains in the Borley Rectory, or maybe he unleashed it onto the world. Now, my friends, if you want to hear more scary stories about haunted houses and just about everything else under the sun, we're the place to be. Subscribe and keep on creeping on. Number 4. Roland Doe. Now, the story of Roland Doe is fairly notable as far as famous exorcisms go, mainly because Roland Doe's case served as the inspiration for the legendary horror film The Exorcist. Roland Doe, a name for the anonymous boy, lived a quiet life in Maryland. He was the family's only son and didn't have much in the way of friends while growing up, save for his Aunt Harriet, a spiritualist and lover of the occult. When Roland was young, she gifted him a Ouija board and taught him how to use it. Now in 1949, dear old Aunt Harriet would pass away, devastating Roland and the family. After her passing, the family started to experience strange, inexplicable occurrences around the home. Scratching would come from inside the walls, water would be leaking out of all the pipes, and curiously, Roland's bed would be moved around in the middle of the night. Confused, the family sought out the experts of everyone they knew, and their local minister suggested they needed the help of an exorcist. Priests came to exorcise the home and Roland, believing that the boy had been possessed by the devil. They strapped him to a mattress to begin, but had to stop when he broke the straps and slashed one of the clergymen with the strap. Red scratches appeared all over his body, reading out the word Louis. The family believed this was a sign they needed to move to St. Louis, where the family had relatives. From there, they were put into contact with a series of priests who would conduct round-the-clock exorcisms on Roland. The days would pass normally, but at night, the battle would begin when Roland would enter a trance-like state, speaking in Latin, gutturally growling, even threatening priests that Satan had taken him. For weeks, the priests toiled tirelessly to exorcise the demon, until eventually there was a miracle breakthrough. The priests called upon the power of St. Michael and told the demon he was coming to battle them. Roland woke the next morning and said he had a vision of Satan and St. Michael on a heavenly battlefield, fighting for control of his soul, and that he knew Satan was gone. From here, Roland lived a happy, healthy, normal life, and his case might have been forgotten if author William Blatty wasn't inspired by the case after reading a story about it in the paper. But without him, we never would have got The Exorcist, so it all worked out, mostly. Number 3. The Crescent Hotel. Now the Crescent Hotel is a beautiful stop if you're ever visiting Arkansas. It's been called the Grand Old Lady of the Ozarks due to its gorgeous old Gothic design and wonderful view of the mountains. What a shame that such a beautiful spot is said to be home to tortured souls unable to move on. During construction of the Crescent Hotel, a worker named Michael plunged from the death, fatally landing in room 218. The room has since been a hotspot for paranormal activity, with bizarre noises and laughter reportedly heard by the guests. But this wouldn't be the only haunting present at the Crescent Hotel. You see, before it found life as a hotel resort and a spa, the Crescent Hotel was run by a charismatic charlatan named Norman Baker, who ran an alternative clinic out of the hotel, claiming the spring waters had restorative powers and could cure any ailments. Of course, Baker didn't even have the slightest medical experience or training and was far closer to a two-bit con man than he was a doctor. Patients would check in and never leave. Baker would promise patients a cure for everything up to cancer, when in reality he was just injecting them with corn silk and water. Baker was arrested for his crimes in 1949, but the souls of those he tormented wouldn't find peace yet. All throughout the hotel, guests report strange noises, scratchings, whisperings, with some going so far as to say they see ghastly figures, floating orbs and such. There's even a notable ghost who wanders the halls. A nurse named Theodora is the hotel's most prominent ghost, who manifests as an old woman flustered out of room 14. She hates mess and discord, and many guests report that they'll discover their belongings have been rearranged if they're staying in her room. There's even sightings of a ghost cat named Morris, who luckily is a benevolent spirit. Guests report hearing purring or feeling a mysterious warm brushing against their legs. I just hope there's meow mix in the afterlife. Number 2. The Winchester House. William Winchester was the heir to the Winchester rifle throne, and married to his wife Sarah, they lived happily. They welcomed a daughter, although tragically she fell ill immediately and passed before her first birthday. Shortly after, William would pass as well, leaving Sarah alone, depressed, and with roughly $20 million kicking around. In 1886, Sarah used the money to move from Connecticut to California and began construction on her legacy, her mansion. It was built for 20 years. She paid workers night and day round the clock, demolishing one improvement to make another. But the house wasn't built like any other house. It seemed random, like it was being built out of a dream. A staircase that goes nowhere, ending at the ceiling. Multiple boarded up rooms. She spent roughly $5 million on the construction of the odd home. But why? Did she just want something to start conversations when dinner guests were over? Well, shortly after her family tragedies, Sarah visited a psychic for advice, who told her she was being cursed by the spirits of all the lives taken by her husband's rifles. That is a lot of angry cowboys. She was told she needed to build a mansion to capture the wandering souls and seal them away from the rest of the world, and she made it her life's mission to accomplish this. She thought that the house's bizarre design would confuse spirits and keep them at bay. I honestly don't know about that. I thought ghosts could float and go through walls. I don't even know if they would care. The house still stands and is a popular tourist spot for fledgling ghost hunters, who believe that her massive ghost trap did work and she's caught spirits, with reportings of mysterious sounds. There are some who even claim that Sarah herself has been trapped in her home, doomed to walk amongst the spirits she worked so hard to capture. Number 1. The Bell Witch. In the 1800s, a farmer named John Bell moved his family to Adams, Tennessee, onto a bountiful 300-acre farm. Bell quickly became a figurehead of the community, respected by many, and becoming a local leader at his town's church. For the Bell family, things were the brightest they've ever been. They were living the dream. But things wouldn't be good for long, and they'd find themselves in a nightmare. By 1817, strange things started to occur around the farmstead. John found a mysterious animal, a mutant hybrid that resembled a grotesque mix between a dog and a rabbit. The Bell children would complain to their father that they would hear strange sounds that sounded like vermin gnawing at all things in their bedrooms, and the children would wake up with scratches all over their bodies. At all hours of the day, everyone in the family would complain that they could hear faint whispering and singing, and that it sounded like an old woman was singing hymns on their wall. Most tragically, the Bells found a mysterious vial of liquid inside their home that no one could understand. Nervous about what it was, John Bell offered a small amount of it to their cat, who passed almost immediately after. For 3 long years, the Bell family was tormented by these strange occurrences, chalking it up to a mysterious entity that would later be known as the Bell Witch, named after the mysterious old humming that they kept hearing. In 1820, John Bell grew extremely ill, quickly descending in health and passing. At his funeral, the mourners complained that all they could hear was the laughing of an old woman, mocking and singing at the late John Bell. The farm was so notable that it even caught the attention of President Andrew Jackson, who in 1819, a year before John Bell's passing, visited it to see if the legends of the witch were true. Allegedly, as soon as his carriage arrived at the property, the horses refused to budge anymore. The animals can always tell.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Perron family. It's January 1971. A large farmhouse sits in Harrisville, Rhode Island. The Perron family, Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters move into what they thought would be their dream home. One night the family notices strange occurrences happening. A couple of strange noises as if they hear things moving on their own, couple chairs. From the first night to the first week, right away though, the incidents got worse over time. It started with a missing broom at first, but then resulted in a paranormal nightmare, to say the least. In researching the home, Carolyn discovered that the same family had owned it for 8 generations previous to them, during which time many had died by either drowning, murder, or even hanging. Paranormal investigator team Ed and Lorraine Warren, the New England demonologists, were brought in. This is where it gets haunting. After a walk about the property, they claimed that the home was haunted by a demon named Bathsheba. In fact, a woman named Bathsheba Sherman had lived on the property in the 1800s. Whoever the spirit was, she perceived herself to be the mistress of the home, and she resented the new homeowners. According to Andrea Perron, one of the daughters, who remembers the night vividly, says the family encountered several spirits in the house that caused them turmoil. Beds levitating in the middle of the night, tall ghostly shadows, and even their bedrooms reeking of rotten meat. Ew. The family avoided going into the basement at all because of a cold, deathly presence. Basements, man, always. The things that went on there were so incredibly frightening. Quote from Lorraine herself. The Warrens made frequent trips to the house over the years, and the Perron family lived there. They performed a seance that had Carolyn Perron speaking in tongues before she was allegedly thrown across the room by a spirit. The Warrens made frequent trips to the house, but Lorraine insisted that she and her husband would never ever try an exorcism, which must be performed, of course, by a Catholic priest, due to its dangers. The seances apparently allegedly caused Carolyn Perron to be temporarily possessed one time, which Andrea, their daughter, claims she watched unknowingly from the top of the stairs. Shaken by the seances and concerned for his wife's mental health, Roger Perron asked the Warrens to leave and stop investigating the house, since it was making things even worse. According to Andrea Perron, the family finally gave in and moved out of the house in 1980. Luckily for them, The presence did not follow them. Number 4. The Snedeker House. In 1986, Ed and Lorraine Warren were on the scene yet again. We know these two. They're the superhero duo and couple that have literally riddled this planet most of its dark forces. They arrived and proclaimed the Snedeker House a former funeral home to be absolutely infested with demons. The Haunting in Connecticut, a film very loosely based on the Warrens' versions of events, was released in 2009. In 1986, Carmen and Al Snedeker moved to a small town of Southington, Connecticut, with the purpose of being closer to the hospital at which their oldest son had been treated for Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was while they were moving in that Al made a startling discovery. In the basements again, in particular, the room that was completely embalmed with tables and tools. Okay. The house, it turned out, used to be a funeral home. Oof. Not long after, Carmen says she began experiencing strange phenomena like items disappearing, and her children reported seeing strange people in the house, as well as hearing voices and the sounds of hundreds of birds taking flight. Her oldest, who at the time was in the middle of radiation treatment, began to exhibit radical personality shifts, becoming animalistic and angry. Mop water was reported to turn to blood red, and the sense of rotting flesh and decay were reported all throughout the home. She was also frightened of apparitions that she saw one night with long black hair and black eyes, and the other with white hair and white eyes wearing a pinstripe tuxedo. It was then that Carmen decided to contact Ed and Lorraine, along with a few other investigators. The Warrens moved into the house until they'd experienced this presence the Snedekers were talking about. During their time in the house, they claimed to have seen first-hand demons in the home, with many team members being slapped and beaten and even slammed to the floor. The Warrens deemed it necessary for a full-scale exorcism, after which the house was judged clear by the Warrens themselves. And a peaceful aura then seemed to linger instead of this once cold, dark presence. I mean, it's a funeral home, you know, right off the bat. That's a no-no for me. Number 3, the Smurl haunting. The Smurls moved into their dream home in West Piston, Pennsylvania, August 1973. They claimed that the premises were disturbed by a demon that caused loud noises and bad odors, eventually even throwing their dog into a wall, shaking their mattresses, pushing their daughters down a flight of stairs, and then physically assaulting some family members on several occasions. In 1986, the family had had enough and brought in the pair of demonologists, Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to Ed Warren, the demon that inhabited the Smurl's home was very powerful, shaking mirrors off the walls, moving furniture of course about the room after they tried to persuade it to leave by playing religious hymns and praying. The Warrens claimed that when a drastic temperature drop happened, a tall dark mass formed in the home, and the demon left a message on the mirror telling them to, quote, "get out." After months of investigation, the Warrens alleged that they had a number of audio tapes containing knocking and movement sounds made by the demon. Spokespeople for the Roman Catholic Church said that the home was blessed by several priests who said that they saw no harmful activity. The Smurls, however, claimed a priest performed 3 unsuccessful exorcisms and that the demon avoided the rites by moving between the floors of the home. That same year, the pastor of Immaculate Conception Parish in West Piston said the Smurls felt that after intense prayers, things were finally back to normal. After the Smurl family moved, the next family never encountered anything supernatural while living there. Hoax or haunting? What do you think? Number 2, Amityville. The Warrens are best known for their involvement in the 1975 Amityville Horror investigation. New York couple George and Kathleen Lutz claimed that their house was haunted by a violent demonic presence so intense that it eventually drove them out of their home with mental health problems. The reported haunting was the basis for the 1977 book and adapted into the 1979 and 2005 films of the same name, while also serving as inspiration for the film series that followed. Though their investigations remain intriguing, the Amityville Horror case was Ed and Lorraine Warren's claim to fame. In November 1974, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr., the eldest child of the DeFeo family, murdered his entire family, including all of his siblings, in their beds with a .35 caliber rifle. Ugh. The infamous case became the catalyst for the claim that demons and spirits haunted the Amityville house. In 1976, George and Kathy Lutz and their 2 sons moved into the Long Island home and soon believed a demonic spirit was residing there with them. George said that he witnessed his wife transforming into a 90-year-old woman and then levitating above their bed late at night. They even claimed to see slime seeping out of their walls and a pig-like creature running around their house. Even more unsettling, knives flew off the counters, pointing right at family members. It got so violent and unpredictable that the family walked around the house with a crucifix, reciting the Lord's prayers around their neck. On their final night there, they say banging as loud as a marching band was coming from the house. 28 days after being in the house, they had to leave. Yeah, no doubt. Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the home, and according to the Warrens, Ed was thrown to the floor and Lorraine felt an overwhelming demonic presence. Along with their research team, they claim to have captured a picture of a spirit in the form of a little boy on the stairway. The story became so infamous the couple passed a lie detector test with flying colors. That's terrifying. Their son, Daniel, admits that he still has nightmares about the horrifying things that he experienced in the house growing up. Yeah, gruesome stuff. I won't spoil Act 3, but it gets dark and bloody. Speaking of gruesome, and our number 1 spot, Michael Taylor. It's 1974, Yorkshire, England. Michael Taylor, age 31, father of 5 and husband to Christine Taylor. Michael was a well-mannered and caring father and husband. Michael, like anyone, became depressed from a back injury and left him short on work and oddly off. After seeking religious advice and one-on-one sessions at a local church, Michael started having outbursts and acting aggressively. Puzzled, of course, he sought one-on-one sessions which turned ugly very soon. After apparently changing form and attacking Marie, a young religious leader helping Taylor, and unable to remember anything, Michael and the church agreed that an exorcism was necessary. Father Peter Vincent and Reverend Raymond Smith met at St. Thomas and started. It got so violent, he was even tied to the church floor. After hours in the middle of the night, the two had managed to exorcise more than 40 demons out of Michael, in which they had appeared around them as they exited. Violence continued, leaving only 3 remaining for the next day. After returning home from the first session, Michael was found now hours later, naked, in the middle of the street, covered head to toe in blood. Michael apparently had returned home, which then his wife and family dog lay dead as the police arrived in the AM. He was arrested soon after for the death of his wife. Michael had this to say about his late wife in court. Quote, "Released. I am released. It is done. The evil in her has been destroyed." He was acquitted on psychological conditions, and the jury found that he had met his breaking point during the exorcism. He was acquitted on insanity and remained in and out of facilities until he passed in 2013.
Number 5, Brazil. Coming up first on our list of ghost footage that's been freaking out the pros and spooking the amateurs alike is this bizarre clip captured and uploaded to the internet by one Mr. Miracle BR. Thank you, Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle shared this, and we're glad they did, even if it does have us questioning the nature of our reality ever so slightly. The footage appears to be a body camera footage of a police raid in Brazil, where a group of plain-clothed officers are ready to kick down doors to deal with whatever's hiding inside. Of course, they might just be the wrong emergency department to call, as it seems like the Ghostbusters might have been a lot more appropriate. Take a look now. When they kick in that door, either they used a little bit too much force, or there's something in there they're not going to be able to put handcuffs on. The door keeps banging, swinging rapidly and violently back and forth in place. Whatever's going on with this one door seems to be present on all the doors in this warehouse, as every door they pass through starts swinging violently as if it's got a mind of their own, leading to the men getting understandably jumpy. You know, the academy doesn't teach you how to deal with ghosts. They start looking over their shoulders over and over, and the video cuts pretty short when the men start to dart down the hall, running away in a flurry. Running away from what, I wonder? Now this clip alone is already pretty unsettling. Imagine, even with you and your squad, well trained, heavily armed, I still think seeing something you can't explain would have me on edge in a building that already looks pretty creepy. The creepiest part though is apparently this happens to cops more than we know. When the clip was posted, someone on Reddit responded with their own experience in the service, and they wrote, "I've cleared some creepy buildings as a cop. The most unrealistic thing about this video is that they kept going. I remember clearing this abandoned plantation house that still had an alarm hooked up with my partner. As we cleared each room, we left the doors open so we knew we were cleared. Turned around after the last door and all the doors were shut. Noped on out of there. Makes a lot of sense. I would probably do the same." And if you're looking for way more videos about ghosts, goblins, ghouls, and basically everything freaky above the sun and below it, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. Hit that subscribe button, please tickle that little bell if you wouldn't mind. But Do that after this video, because we got way more ghost sightings coming up for you right now.
Coming in at number 4, back in the late 1930s, on an especially dark evening, a nun was driving a school bus filled with children home after a field trip. They were heading down Shane Road, but when approaching the railroad crossing, the bus abruptly stalled out on the tracks. Most of the students were sleeping, so the nun was quietly attempting to start the engine back up when a train emerged, seemingly out of nowhere, as its headlamp was burned out. Something that hopefully wouldn't happen anymore. It was too late to evacuate the children, as the train was moving way too fast. The nun, desperately and frantically, turned the key, making one last attempt to restart the bus, just as the train smashed through the bus, cutting it in half. The nun was thrown through the windshield, but miraculously survived. The rest of the folks on the bus weren't as fortunate and passed from the event. A few weeks later, the nun, guilt-ridden and heartbroken, returned to the site of the accident, filled with guilt and wanted to end her life. She parked her car on the tracks and sat there, waiting for the next train to come along. Later, when a train came into sight, speeding down towards her, in the same way as that tragic night, the nun began to hear some familiar voices. Then, her car began to move forward, as if it was being pushed from behind, rolling to safety just as the train passed by. In disbelief, the nun got out of her car and began looking around, expecting to find some sort of good Samaritan, but didn't see a single person. She looked back at her car and noticed child-sized handprints on the back of her trunk, and realized that the ghosts of her students had saved her life. The nun was then blessed with a new purpose in life, and she opened a school for orphans, teaching there for the rest of her days. It is said that to this day, if anyone parks their car on or near the railroad tracks at Shane Road, ghostly children will push the vehicle to safety, as they are determined to make sure that no one meets the same gruesome fate that they suffered. Many locals have made claims that say that you can hear the rumbling sounds of a train nearing, the steam whistle howling, and the screeching of wheels as if the train is grinding to a halt, but nothing is there at all, except for the haunting chill of the night. One of the children from this accident is more, shall I say, social than the others, and sometimes tries to find her way home. Not long after these initial incidents, a woman was driving down Shane Road late one night, and as she approached the railroad crossing, she saw a little girl standing all alone on the side of the road, holding a teddy bear. Now this woman immediately stopped, pulled over, and offered the girl a ride home. Once they arrived at the girl's house, the child was hesitant to leave the vehicle and to head inside. The woman assumed that the girl must have run away from home after a fight with her parents, and offered to head to the house first to reassure the family. When the woman got out of the car, she looked back to give the child a reassuring smile, but the girl had completely vanished. She quickly reopened her car door, but no one was there. However, the seatbelt was still fastened. The photo evidence we have from this tale shows the little girl waiting by the tracks, just wanting to get home.
Our next weird clip for you is going to be this footage that was uploaded to the Ghosts subreddit. It's got investigators talking and viewers pausing to try and understand just what's going on. And a shout out to the Ghosts subreddit. Thanks for doing most of the heavy lifting on my job. Now you might think that ghosts and spirits only come out to play at night, but when the weather's nice, even the ghosts and ghouls and all things malevolent come out to soak up some rays. Let's give that clip a quick watch. Did you see it? Kinda hard not to. The white specter rushing by the side of the house. The user posted this with the caption, "Coworker caught this outside of his house and we're speechless," and it's easy to see why. What is it that's been caught on camera sprinting by that house? Now there's definitely something mysterious here. I get the same vibe off this mysterious entity that I do like the Fresno night crawlers, to shout out one of my favorite cryptids and unknown paranormal mysteries. I can't explain what's happening, and I know there's probably a reasonable scientific explanation, but I'm not finding it right now. Now, not everyone is as convinced as me. I'm very easily swayed. Some commenters had suggested that perhaps this could be a small animal like a monkey running by really fast, or a parrot flying by really fast. You'll have to let us know down below in the comments whether or not you think this was proof of a spectral entity caught on security, or if this is just a funny little creature monkeying around. For what it's worth, and I think we should take this seriously, I think a monkey could be a ghost. As far as I know, monkeys can become ghosts. I've never seen someone disprove this. I've never seen someone prove this either, but this might be that proof we need.
In second place, we have Johnny Johnson. While Toys R Us may no longer exist as a physical store in the United States, I think, I'd like to travel back to the 70s when it did. Located in Sunnyvale, California. No, not Sunnydale. No Hellmouth here, I don't think. Toys R Us decided to build a store over the property of a former ranch. Honestly, pretty normal sounding so far, right? Staff and customers alike began to report multiple incidents of what they believed to be a haunting, ranging from hearing their names whispered to them, or feeling cold breezes, and seeing objects moving around on their own. The woman's bathroom, in particular, seemed especially spooky because the sink's faucet taps would turn on by themselves. Oh, and some female employees said they experienced what felt like some invisible being playing with their hair, which In 1978, psychic Sylvia Brown held a seance there for the first time, determined to identify the entity. The ghost haunting the store allegedly revealed himself as Johnson. Johnson's ghost told Brown that he was a preacher and a ranch hand in the 1880s on what was then the Murphy family farm. He spoke with a mild Swedish accent, and his first name was either John, Jan, or Johan. 10 out of the 16 people assembled there for the seance said they heard a high buzzing noise when Sylvia was supposedly listening to the ghost. The ghost told her that he had been in love with Murphy's daughter Elizabeth, who ran off with an East Coast lawyer. Old news clippings say that Johnson accidentally hacked his leg with an axe while carelessly chopping down trees and met his end from the injuries. Sylvia repeatedly went back to the Toys R Us to communicate with Johnny, who she called the most stubborn, ornery, argumentative ghost she'd ever met in her book, stating that she had tried many times to explain to him that his lifetime as Johnny Johnson had ended. Apparently, Johnny got so frustrated about being told that he had passed that he gave her the ultimatum that if she ever brought it up again, he would go silent. Sylvia let the matter drop since she and the ghost supposedly had a quasi-friendship where they would chat about the annoying and noisy kids who frequented the store. A 2007 piece on Snopes, which if you're unaware of, is a pretty legitimate fact-checking site, featured a woman named O'Brien who had worked at the store for over 18 years stocking shelves, claiming that she didn't believe in ghosts, but when you feel a breeze behind you or someone calls your name and there's nobody there, funny things happen that she just couldn't rationally explain. The report talked about dolls and toy trucks leaping off the shelves, balls bouncing down the aisles, and children's books falling off the racks. Baby swings would move on their own. The folks at Toys R Us say they've tried to explain it logically, but they've got nothing. Johnny was captured on camera in 1978, casually leaning against the shelves while the group that was there for the seance is shown sitting. Now that the store is no longer a Toys R Us, it has housed a Spirit Halloween, which feels fitting for some weird reason.
Number 1, the Arizona truck ghost. You ask any men of the road, ask them if they've ever seen anything strange up there, and they'll tell you everything. And this next clip is just more fuel for that fire. William Church is a truck driver who was driving down Arizona State Route 87 on March 11th, and he saw something he couldn't explain. And this time, it wasn't just the heebie-jeebies from one too many coffees and a Slim Jim for breakfast. He spotted something spectral on the road that was recorded by his dash cam, and he thinks this translucent figure was something not of this world. You can see the lines through the legs making a figure, Church told Fox News. Now there are some locals who believe that the highway itself is haunted. It was first built in 1927 and stretching across approximately 273 miles. There's a good bit of tragic history on Route 87. It's been described as one of Arizona's most treacherous roads, and as such, countless fatal car accidents have occurred on this particular stretch of land. Could it be that because of this, there's spirits still trapped on the long, lonely road, wandering around looking for a home they'll never be able to return to? After Church's video was uploaded and went a bit viral, viewers reported that they'd seen a lot of supernatural activity around Arizona's highways. If I'm ever traveling through Arizona, I think I will take a boat. Perhaps one of Arizona's many plentiful boats for its vast and teeming rivers and lakes. That's what everybody knows about Arizona. It's a really wet state, right? Really wet state.
In 5th place, we have the origins of the board. No better place to start than from the beginning, which is a very good place to start. The board's dark history begins with the strange death of the owner of the original trademark, American entrepreneur William Fuld, in 1927. After acquiring the business from its former owner, a medium named Helen Peters, who sold it because of the serious damage it caused her family, William built the company into a profitable business. Shortly thereafter, he began to experience his own family troubles that resulted in him cutting his brother out of the company in 1919, and just like my mother and I, they never spoke again. 8 years later, on February 24th, William was on the roof supervising the erection of a flagpole when a support suddenly snapped and he toppled off the building. He tried to break the fall by grabbing onto a windowsill, but the window closed and he fell to the ground, breaking several ribs. As somebody with a rib injury, ouch. He should have survived, but the vehicle that was taking him to the hospital sent a splint of a cracked rib bone into his heart, killing him instantly. Well then, what a coinky dink. After his death, William's children took over the company. Catherine and William A. Fuld ran the company until the youngest brother, Hubert, became president of William Fuld Incorporated in 1942. Now Parker Brothers acquired the company and all of its assets in 1966. And finally, Hasbro took over Parker Brothers and with it, the Ouija board in 1991. Turns out, in 2008, during an attempt to market pink board games to girls, Hasbro released a very pink and girly limited edition version of the board. It's a good thing I never came across it as a kid because I probably would have been so tempted to play with the board. Heck, I almost found myself tempted to check eBay for a listing today, but I don't trust myself enough to not spend too much money on it purely for the aesthetic. Okay, I lied, I did check eBay, but it would be like $200, and that is not in my budget. In fourth place, we have the board that wouldn't burn. Writer Brandy Fleck has discussed openly how she and her friends played with the Hasbro branded Ouija board as teens purely out of young mind curiosity and rebellion. At the time, her uncle told tales about when weird stuff began to happen at his home. He and his wife decided to throw their Ouija board into a dumpster at a local gas station, but it magically reappeared at the house. For reference, the weird stuff included lights flashing all around Brandy's aunt's bedroom downstairs and her uncle's bedroom upstairs at the same time that woke them from sleep, but when her uncle looked out the window, there was no one outside, and an instance of a white rat appearing and disappearing happened from the aunt's bedroom. Brandy is positive that the home was haunted, and remembered that the pet cats that roamed the house weren't too fond of the environment, especially the aunt's room. Animals are usually much more sensitive than humans to spirits, just saying. Now, when it came time for Brandy to play with the board herself, she dabbled quite often with danger. Sometimes nothing would happen, other times she and her friends would receive messages from what they thought were spirits. One particular evening, she and a friend were playing, and the indicator started moving quickly in an erratic circle. Now, whoever, or whatever they were talking to, was perturbed, and upon asking what the message was that it wanted to get across, the board spelled out 911. Now, the attacks of September 11th, 2001 hadn't happened yet, but she and her friends knew that, you only call that number if something bad happened. So they panicked, immediately taking their hands off the indicator, making direct eye contact, grabbing the Ouija board in sync, running through the house, and throwing the thing in the backyard. While they panted after that run, they discussed how to dispose of the board and decided on burning it with what they had lying around, thankfully having a bunch of kerosene kicking around. They poured the flammable fluid on the board, lit a match, dropped it, and ran. And what do you know? The damn thing refused to burn. I'm not surprised. Brandy and her friend tried with multiple matches, and zilch. She played with it many times afterwards, experiencing instances of her boombox turning on by itself, stuff falling off shelves, and erratic, unintelligible messages. I'm no arsonist, but I've been known to play around with lighter fluid, and that stupid board should have gone up in flames easily. In third place, we have a cursed previous tenant. Now, Mark has very adamantly emphasized that he has not embellished his tale at all, and this is just what happened after moving into a Ouija board cursed home in Australia that he lived in with his family between 1982 to 85. Now, Mark's mom, who was a stay-at-home mom, said the first thing she noticed after a month or two of living in this house was that the family dog would refuse to enter the home and spend all of her time in the backyard in her kennel. Now, apparently if the mom was bringing in the laundry, the dog would happily follow up until the back door, but as soon as the mom reached the back door, the dog's tail would drop and she would start whimpering. Now, Mark's mom chalked it up to weird behavior for moving, nothing more, until weird things began to happen. The laundry room would flood for no reason, with adjacent rooms left completely dry, and Mark's parents would walk down the back of the house to find light bulbs that had shattered in their sockets. His mom in particular said she absolutely detested walking in the back of the house at night, citing that as soon as she entered the stairway landing area that was at the back of the house, her hairs would stand on end and she would feel a sensation like someone watching her every move. Nope, that's when I would have left. The weirdness continued, ramping up over a few months in the evenings when the parents would hear shuffling feet coming from the rumpus room, which was located directly below their bedroom. Now, often Mark's mom said she'd be, knitting or watching TV at the front of the house by herself late at night, only to hear laughter coming from the back of the house. And she would always check, never finding any source of the noise. Oh, I'm not done yet. Yeah, we're only partway through this tale. One weekend, when a cousin and an aunt came to stay at the home, the mom had to rush out for an errand and warned the aunt before leaving the house about, the weird noises just to be safe and polite. The aunt dismissed the claims, but of course, Mark's mom returned home later to find the uncle consoling the aunt in the driveway of the house. Now, remember, he wasn't originally supposed to be there that weekend. While Mark's mom was gone, the aunt felt thumping from the floorboards, laughing from the back of the house, and a disembodied spirit calling her name. Mark's mom was fed up at this point and started asking around the neighbors for any kind of clarity about the house. And this is where she learned that the previous renter went a bit crazy after a messy divorce and joined a religious group where she hosted seances in the rumpus room, where, the majority of the disturbances had been coming from. It goes without saying that Mark's mom wanted to, try and move out that same day, but her husband disagreed, so they stayed put for a while yet. A few months later, Mark began complaining to his mom about a man who sat on top of his wardrobe, looking at him at night, so she pitched the entire thing out of frustration. A few weeks after that, Mark's mom was getting changed in her room at the top of the house one day, and when she went to get out of her room, she found the door was locked. She started shaking the door, but it wouldn't open, calling out for help, but no one one was home. The poor woman was 7 months pregnant, but she made the decision to shimmy down the drain pipe to the ground, re-entered the house through the side door, up the stairs, to find her door wide open and unlocked. Now, she was ticked with the house at this point and made the decision to consult a local pastor to ask what to do. After listening to everything the family was going through, the pastor presented her with two options. She could ignore everything and pray it stopped, or read enough Bible verses out loud in hopes that they could anger the spirit into, moving out. He warned her, though, that if they went with the second option, it might throw stuff around. He was quoted as saying, "Take it or leave it, and you might think I'm mad, but you have like 2 to 3 demonic entities residing in the back of your house." This was the end of it for Mark's mom, who was already debating divorce from her husband and began packing up everything to move herself and her family out of there. The day before the family was about to finally leave, the mom was checking in on the youngest ward while she was sleeping in the nursery at the top of the house and discovered that the bed that was supposed to have that ward was empty. The window above the bed was wide open, and the fly screen behind it had its rubber seal hanging in the breeze, with the flap of the fly screen swinging in the breeze. Now, underneath that window was an annex over the back door, which now had a huge dent in the fiberglass of it, and its supports were completely broken off. The tiny human was crawling around the backyard with the dog playing beside her. Completely panicked, the mom called the doctor, who confirmed the tiny human had a mild concussion. Nothing more. Evidently, she had somehow fallen out of the window and survived, and pretty much unharmed. The family moved out that day and never looked back. Yeah, that's a haunted house I don't need to visit. In second place, we have William Peter Blatty, author of The Exorcist. Yep, the book that inspired the famous flick of the same name. In a 1972 interview with British journalist Ray Connolly, he recalls that while finishing his book, The Exorcist, he had a personal experience with a Ouija board that convinced him that he was communicating with some kind of spirit. He claimed that he had never been tempted to explore the board until that date, but once consumed, spent 10 days under its power, positive that he was communicating with the dead. He knew all about how Ouija boards worked because he'd researched it so much for the book. William originally thought it was his father communicating with them, and consulted an expert to help, validate the experience. The expert was a woman who could put herself into a self-imposed hypnotic trance, and who would operate the planchette on the Ouija board. William claims he didn't touch it at all, and asked the questions in Arabic, which the woman didn't understand a word of, and got precisely the right answers. William told Ray that after experimenting with the Ouija board, strange, inexplicable things continued to happen, believing it to be the tricks of a poltergeist. While doing the revisions of the book at a friend's house, the telephone rang, and suddenly the receiver leapt off the hook. It happened to the friend first, and then to William. So he asked a friend who did the acoustics for the Kennedy Center what the possibilities were, electrically, and his friend said it was impossible. He further consulted telephone engineers in 2 states, who also confirmed that was impossible. But both men saw it happen. This was the culmination of several incidents, but it was the main one that in no way could be explained. William remained tight-lipped about most of the other experiences, other than a typewriter that would constantly spit out lines of gibberish instead of the intended writings. Yikes! In first place, we have the Ouija board recovered from the Donovan household. Now, this is a tale from the investigative files of Ed and Lorraine Warren, my favorite paranormal investigators. 15-year-old Patty Donovan came across the Ouija board and, decided to use it to find a friend. From the first yes in response to her queries, Patty was hooked. She spent months falling in love with a spirit she believed to be in love with her, telling it specifics about her everyday life. Now, obviously, she was pretty isolated, but oh well. After a year of telling all of her secrets to the board, Patty had become emotionally dependent on the spirit, asking it one night to reveal her future. During the very long session, it laid out a scenario of Patty's life for the next 6 years, providing specific details, right down to the date of birth of her first child, and the fact that she would have a total of 3 children by 1978, which is all information that would eventually prove to be true. Being as dependent as she was, on the evening of March 2nd, Patty now pleaded for the spirit to manifest. "Please be true, my fake boyfriend." The next morning, her dad, Theodore Donovan, found the spark plug wires pulled out, the rubber hoses unfastened, and the fan belt cut when he attempted to start his car. Now, not much later, Patty attempted to start her car, and it was discovered later that the internal engine had been completely disassembled, somehow overnight, when nobody heard anything. That week, other incidents of apparent vandalism occurred around the Donovan house. Foundation shrubs were yanked out of the ground, roots and all. On the roof, a 6-foot cast iron pipe housing, electrical wires was found bent at a 90-degree angle. On Friday, March 8th, Ted marked 1 flat on the kitchen calendar. No sooner did Patty get her car back from the shop, then one of her other tires lost air. The next Saturday, her father made the same entry on the calendar, although this time it seemed the tire had been cut with a sharp implement. In the meantime, Patty could no longer raise her invisible boyfriend on the Ouija board. Night after night, she tried to communicate, but the planchette would simply slide over to goodbye. She had no idea that her lovely boyfriend had actually manifested in the form of a supernatural vandal. Like, come on, buddy goes completely silent and your house starts being targeted by hell and you don't pick up on it? By the second week of March, material damage to the house and cars had become so extreme that Ted complained to the police, who assured him that they'd keep an eye on the property during night patrols. Later that second week, after work, Ted and his wife, Ellen, were sitting in the kitchen with their son Brian when all three heard something smash against a wall somewhere inside the house. Carefully moving to investigate, they found a gaping 18-inch hole in the plasterboard wall in Brian's room. Now, this hole wasn't any ordinary hole. The jagged edges were pointing inwards, with the blow coming from inside the walls. Yeah, the evidence is already a mountain for me, but we still have plenty more to pick through. Listening in the dark that night, Ted heard the sound of a board being pried loose, but after checking the entire house thoroughly, found no loose boards. The house was further plagued by loud noises every night that only escalated in frequency and volume, along with further unexplainable damage to the walls. On April 1st, furniture began to levitate, with a 250-pound dresser flinging its contents while flying erratically. Rocks had also begun to rain from the sky, pelting only the Donovan house, which the police bore witness to. Ted eventually broke down at work and explained the horror of his home to his supervisor, who urged him to reach out to the Warrens. Now, Ted instead tried moving his family into a hotel first, and the spirits followed the family there, destroying the room and making so much noise that the family was thrown out of the hotel and forced to return home. Now, they finally contacted Ed and Lorraine, who arrived in Maine as quickly as they were able to, finding the home in complete disarray. Lorraine originally said nothing, although at the time she sensed in the home the presence of entities so numerous and threatening that she had to fight with herself to keep from going back outside. After a lengthy tour of the house, Ed and Lorraine conducted an interview with the entire family, where Patty's history with the Ouija board was revealed. About time! The Warrens then contacted the Catholic Church to begin the process for an exorcism to be granted, which sadly took a month. The family experienced many more unexplainable horrors during that time, but that alone could fill a whole top 5, and I don't have that kind of time. After the exorcism took place on May 2nd, the family was finally free of the demonic torment, but they were left with over $5,000 in damages to the home, which would be over $30,000 in today's money. Yay!
Coming in at number 5 is the Diablos of the Alamo. Located in San Antonio, Texas, the Alamo, formerly known as Mission San Antonio de Valero, is renowned for its pivotal role in the Texas Revolution. It was established by Spanish Franciscan friars in the early 18th century as a mission to convert the native people to Christianity. The mission eventually became a military outpost and acquired its famous name, the Alamo, after the cottonwood trees that surrounded it. It gained its notoriety during the Texas Revolution in 1836. When in a desperate attempt to defend Texas's independence from Mexico, a group of Texan freedom fighters, including James Bowie, William B. Travis, and Davy Crockett, held the Alamo against General Santa Anna's formidable Mexican forces. The siege lasted for 13 days, and despite their courageous efforts, the Texan defenders were overrun on March 6, 1836. The battle became a symbol of Texan determination and resistance, and Remember the Alamo became a rallying cry for the Texan forces, spurring them to victory in later battles. With such a rich history, and for it to be the resting place for countless dead soldiers, it's no wonder the Alamo is haunted to bits. It wasn't long after the Battle of the Alamo had ended that the first sightings of ghosts at the historical site began to surface. General Santa Anna, angered by the idea of the mission becoming a shrine to the rebellious Texans, ordered the historic church to be burnt down. However, when a group of cavalrymen arrived to carry out the task, they encountered 6 ghostly figures, which they called Diablos, standing before the Alamo, each holding a flaming sword. This scared the absolute socks off the soldiers sent to burn the Alamo, and they left with a chilling story to tell and soiled underwear. Rumor has it those entities protecting the Alamo were the spirits of the fallen soldiers from the battle. Others argued that they might be the old Franciscan monks who once guarded the mission. General Andrade, skeptical of the tales, decided to go to the Alamo himself to burn it down as ordered by General Santa Anna. But when he arrived with his men and directed them to the Longhouse barracks, they witnessed a tall male spirit on the roof with flaming balls in each hand. The sight was so so terrifying that the soldiers dropped to their knees in fear, unable to proceed. Andrade and his troops quickly left the mission, never to return. In fact, neither Andrade nor Santa Anna would ever revisit the Alamo ever again, and over the next decade, the once historic site fell to ruin. The story of the warrior ghost and the terrifying encounters at the Alamo became part of the lore surrounding the haunted history of the site, contributing to its reputation as one of the most haunted places in the world. But hey, at least you know where to go in case you forgot to pack a lighter, right? And at number 4 is going to be the Pusher of West Point. Located in West Point, New York, the United States Military Academy, USMA for short, was established on the 16th of March, 1802. The Academy is a world-famous educational institution for cadets commissioning into the United States Army, and is the oldest of 5 American service academies. Being over 220 years old, it's no surprise that over the years there have been several sightings of ghosts and unexplained events within the walls of the school. Cadets of both past and present have shared feelings of being watched by unseen presences while no one is there. There have also been a litany of reports of ghost sightings, with all sorts of cadets talking about seeing bone-chilling apparitions in the middle of the night. Though the most terrifying of these ghost stories comes from the early 1970s, known only as the Pusher, and the story goes like this. 2 a.m. on a gloomy October's night, 2 male cadets lay asleep in room 4714 of the North Barracks 47th Division. One of the cadets is woken up by some strange sounds they heard coming from the closet. Tired and concerned, the cadet opened the closet only to be greeted by the ghost of a soldier with eyes made of light that struck fear into the cadet like a bolt of lightning. Upon seeing the apparition, the cadet screamed and it would vanish. His roommate claimed he never saw a ghost, but felt an otherworldly coldness in the room. The ghost was described as a middle-aged soldier wearing an antique 1830s uniform with a cap, musket, and handlebar mustache. And after his first sighting, other cadets in and around the academy would report seeing the exact same ghost. He would eventually earn the nickname of the Pusher because his presence alone would make the environment so cold that his victims could do nothing but lay still until the pressure of his glacial aura relented. Due to fears of the Pusher's return, room 4714 was permanently vacated and it turned into a study area, which worked, as since then there have been no reports of the Pusher appearing in those barracks, which is a lot smarter than what I would do to avoid him. I'd probably just wear a jacket and call it a day. Anyway, next up at number 3 is the Curse of the Silent Mother. This paranormal account was posted to Reddit 7 years ago by user CatFace0, recalling firsthand his experience with ghosts during the Vietnam War. The story begins with the poster being recruited to the Tunnel Commandos because he was very short and could fit in tight spaces. He and the other commandos' jobs to operate within the many tunnel complexes within Vietnam. Usually he would operate within, forgive me for the pronunciation error, Cu Chi tunnels near Saigon. But on this particular day, he and another commando named Benoit were sent to investigate a tunnel complex west of, again, forgive my pronunciation, Da Nang. The freshly dug tunnel was incredibly claustrophobic, giving the 2 men little room to move, and it stunk of rotten flesh. After tunneling for what felt like hours, the 2 soldiers stumbled upon an empty room, lit only by a single gas lamp. Cautiously, the 2 men entered, only to find a stone staircase in the corner of the room, which was unusual, as the tunnel was already several feet deep, implying that this room has been around for much longer than the tunnels were. The pair descended down the stairs for hours on end, until reaching a door at the bottom, with light seeping from beneath. Upon entering, the soldiers came across a room with 10 or so people in it, all silently rocking back and forth, staring blankly at a small altar. No matter what the pair did, those 10 people wouldn't break from their rocking trance, with their eyes completely white, even their irises. When the tunnelers went to investigate the altar, they found only a small golden statue of a beautiful woman with tentacles for legs. And no, I'm not talking about Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Terrified, the 2 men destroyed the room and left in a hurry. The experience scared them so much, both requested to be removed from the tunneling commandos and transferred elsewhere. The request was accepted, but it wouldn't save them, as both men began reporting hearing strange voices and whispers at night, calling out to them saying the words, "Defiler, come to the Red House." They would hear this phrase constantly, impeding on sleep and ruining their mental condition, to the point that both men were discharged and sent back home. But the whispering wouldn't stop, and it only got worse. Both men would receive clay versions of the gold statue they saw in the mail, and that same statue was left in unexplained places like the glove compartment of their cars. Later, the 2 would discover that they were under the curse of something known as the Silent Mother, and the only way to break this curse was to visit an ancient shrine, which the 2 did in order to stop hearing those whispering voices. Upon finding the shrine painted entirely in red, they would see the walls covered in human remains, and several statuettes of the octopus-legged woman, and another stone staircase, much like the one they found in the tunnel. One can only assume that this was the Red House that the soldiers were hearing the voice talk about so often. The pair descended down the staircase, and at the bottom they found a large wooden statue of that same golden figure they saw before, which would speak to them in the same voice that they heard the whispers in. It told them to repent for desecrating one of its holy sites, and began inching towards the two men. Fortunately, the two soldiers came prepared, and instead of succumbing to death by cursed statue, they blew the Red House up sky high, getting out of the shrine at the nick of time. Probably the most American solution to an ancient curse I've ever seen. And the craziest part about it worked. The two men for the rest of their lives reported that after the incident, they never heard strange whispers again. Moving on to number 2 are the unexplained disappearances in the Swiss Alps. Amidst the tumultuous Second World War, Switzerland, ever committed to maintaining neutrality, found itself in quite the pickle, coveted by Allied and Axis powers. When Germany's acts of aggressions encroached upon the Swiss borders, the United Kingdom swiftly dispatched a company of soldiers to reinforce the defense. Thus, fate placed one British unit in a remote village nestled within the serene Swiss Alps. In the first weeks of their arrival, the villagers observed an unsettling pattern of peculiar occurrences. Items mysteriously vanishing from people's homes, sheds, and all around the mountain village. While these were brushed off as simple robberies, things quickly went dark when a young man vanished without a trace. Initially deemed an unfortunate accident, fear took root as more and more people were inexplicably disappearing. The sudden disappearances of the village's residents gave rise to a chilling rumor that a malevolent creature lurked in the foreboding mountains. The fear reached a peak when Private Reginald, a member of the British contingent, would also go missing. One ominous night, patrolling soldiers saw a figure lurking outside a house, peering through the window. Alerted by the soldiers' shouts, the mysterious intruder fled in haste. Upon chasing after the elusive figure to the outskirts of the village, it would disappear. However, the chase was not in vain, as the soldiers were able to find a cave concealed in snow. They approached the cave with caution, and upon hearing shots, they fired back into the deep darkness. After being met with silence, they soldiered on until they found the half-eaten remains of 7 residents, and laying next to them was Private Reginald with a hole in his chest. Horror gripped the hearts of the soldiers as they pieced together the ghastly truth. It was not the machinations of some monstrous creature that plagues the village, but a monster among men, Reginald himself. I just don't get why he ate only a little bit of each victim though. Like, when I get a box of chicken wings, I don't half eat all of them, right? I finish each wing, then move on to the next. What a weirdo, right guys? And topping it all off at number 1 is the Lady Be Good. This paranormal account surrounds the enigmatic story of a B-17 plane named the Lady Be Good during World War II. The aircraft, part of US Army Air Forces, disappeared without a trace in 1943 during a bombing mission over Italy. Despite extensive searches, the plane and its 9 crew members seem to have vanished into thin air. The crew was assumed to have fallen in battle, just another casualty of war. However, nearly 15 years later, an oil exploration team stumbled upon the remarkably preserved wreckage of the Lady Be Good in the Libyan desert, 430 miles away from their intended target. The investigators uncovered clues that revealed the crew's desperate attempts to survive the crash and find their way back to safety. However, there was not a single body in sight. Exploring the Libyan desert, investigators would search far and wide for the remains of the crew of the Lady Be Good, but much to their chagrin, nothing would be found. Their mysterious disappearance became a subject of debate among military members and scientists alike, but the mystery would deepen when other pilots began reporting that they saw the Lady Be Good flying in the air. With its crashed remains lying in the Libyan desert, many were baffled by the return of the aircraft and were quick to call it a ghost plane. After this, many more appearances of crashed planes would appear in the air again, distracting and confusing soldiers on both sides of the war. The mystery to how the Lady Be Good returned is still up for debate to this day, but if I've learned one thing today, it's that some things are better left as just mysteries.